following program is paid for and presented by John DeMasi. The opinions expressed are not those of Town Square Media or station advertisers.
WPG Talk Radio 95.5 presents Talk with a Purpose. Join the conversation by calling 609-407-1450. Now, the host of Talk with a Purpose, John DeMasi.
Turn your air conditioner off. We don't have global warming anymore. It's cool this morning. We'll never stop talking about global warming. I'm convinced of that. But anyway, good morning and welcome to another edition of Talk with a Purpose. Every Saturday, we're here 9 till noon. WPG Talk Radio 95.5, also heard on 1450 AM and online, always online, streaming at WPGTalkRadio.com. So there's many ways to listen, and we invite you to stay tuned for the next 3 hours because we don't have anything to talk about, do we? No, not much. We have a special guest this morning. Rarely do we get authors here on the show, but we are intrigued by this gentleman. His name is Jack Cashel, and he actually wrote several books, but his latest book is called Untenable, and it's about the, I guess, white flight in the 60s. It's really an interesting book, and he'll be here at 11 o'clock to talk about that, so we'll get into that with him as well. But in between time, we'll talk about a lot of things, and of course, Donald Trump is always in the news. Another indictment, another week, another indictment. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. And, well, we're going to talk about that a little bit later on in the show. I wanted to start. Well, of course, there's 4 Trump indictments now, and we'll get into that a little bit later on. I was watching Fox the other night, and it was Mark Levin who was on, and he had Alan Dershowitz on, and they were talking about how America has become what they called a banana republic. And they were referring to all the indictments of an ex-president, which they thought was unheard of. Just was thinking about this. Could you see, like, Dwight Eisenhower being indicted? Think of all the presidents. Could you think of JFK being indicted? And, yeah, well, he did a few things in the White House. So, I mean, you just don't think of that. So I want to take that stand a little bit further. This country was founded on, or at least I remember from grade school, it was founded on separation of church and state. Of course, Phil Murphy doesn't know that yet, but we'll get to that at another time. But I'm referring to, this probably snuck by you, a recent New Jersey Supreme Court ruling, not the Supreme Court, the New Jersey Supreme Court, in which they sided with a Catholic school that fired a pregnant unmarried teacher, determining that the termination was legally permissible. Boy, this gets really juicy. This started in 2011. The woman in question, her name was Victoria Cristiello. She accepted a part-time job as a toddler caregiver at St. Teresa's School in Kenilworth. That's Union County. Of course, everything happens in North Jersey, in this state. 3 years later, she was approached about a full-time position teaching art to elementary school students. She told her principal she would need a raise commensurate with her new responsibilities and that she was pregnant and would need to account for childcare with her new work schedule. Okay, she told them that. And guess what happened? She was abruptly fired. That's right, fired. She was told I mean, I can't believe this in this day and age. She was told that she had violated the code of ethics by having premarital sex. How dare she? Of course, she didn't tell them, or she did tell them. Who knows? She was engaged to the child's father. That doesn't count, okay? She just didn't discuss her marital status or whatever in work. Her lawyer, along with civil rights groups, including the ACLU of New Jersey, said the firing violated the state's anti-discrimination statute and raised double standards because only people who are visibly pregnant could be held by the school standards against premarital sex. This past Monday, the New Jersey Supreme Court unanimously ruled that the firing was justified because the woman knowingly violated Catholic law and because New Jersey's anti-discrimination law offers exceptions to religious organizations. Is this a banana republic? Or what? Imagine this. Like, if they had students, and I'm sure they do, all the schools do, if they had students that are pregnant, do they throw them out? No, they don't. So here is a woman who comes clean, says, I'm pregnant. Oh, my God, she's not married. Well, she's going to get married. I mean, that's something that I remember hearing in 1960. The Catholic Church, you can't have premarital sex. I think we've relaxed those laws a little bit in this day and age. But yet, here we are. So the woman is fired. They go back and forth, appellate courts and all of this stuff. And the New Jersey Supreme Court says the Catholic Church is right. What do you think of that? And I thought about this when I was watching this Mark Levin show, and he was talking about Banana Republic. Well, here's another situation where there are definitely anti-discrimination laws all over the place. But yet, they get away with this? I just don't. Normally, I'm on the side of conservatism and all that stuff, but I don't see justice here at all. What are we doing here? What is this country coming to? I mean, and then of course we have Phil Murphy, who denied you the right to worship back when COVID was rampant. So, what are we doing here? What are we doing in this country? I mean, we're indicting presidents or ex-presidents. It never happened before, but it's happening more and more. And now when it gets down to this, I just don't understand it. I really don't understand it. And there are anti-discrimination laws, and this law about religious exceptions, the Catholic Church is getting away with this. Those laws should be changed. I'm sorry, but, and I'm sure that Seth Grossman and the people at Liberty and Prosperity will have a field day with this one. But we'll bring him in. Seth Grossman, Liberty and Prosperity. He's here every Saturday with us, and we welcome him in. Seth, good morning.
Good morning, and you're reminding me of what we learned in law school in our first year, that hard cases make bad laws. And I'm not going to touch that one, because especially since there's so many other things going on with libertyandprosperity.com. First, a side thing. Last night, I got called for a public opinion survey, and I hardly ever get called for them, and I don't know if any of your listeners got called with on this survey. So they said, we want to talk to you about some important public and political issues. Would you like to talk. And I said, sure, I got some time. And they said, here's the first question. What is your race? And I said, I'm sorry, I don't want to take part in this survey. 'Cause I was just offended by it. And then, I guess, actually this happened 2 or 3 days ago. Then they kept calling me back with different callers, because I guess it's important statistically that they, reach a certain segment. And I said, is this the survey where the first question is going to be, what's my race? And she says, oh, I don't know. I didn't read the questions yet. And then she goes through it. What's your race? Before even asking me any questions. So I don't know if it's just me, but I'm just offended by this fixation on race in this country.
Yeah.
That I didn't even participate in the survey.
Yeah. I would have been offended too. Yeah, I would.
But just another side thing in the war against woke Disney. My daughter gave me, who lives in Florida, gave me a little insight into what's going on. She was in Hilton Head, South Carolina, and she lives in South Florida, so she was driving by, and they were making plans to to just stay at a random motel on I-95 on the way down. And what popped up is they had a chance to get a hotel for $175 in the heart of the Magic Kingdom for the same price it would have cost them to just get a random motel on I-95. So I guess the lack of interest in Disney, or the boycott of woke Disney, must be having an effect, because she was just shocked that it was so easy to get a room there. So sometimes, whether it's Bud Light or it's woke Disney, or whether it's Target or whether it's Best Buy, there's when you tell these woke corporations that we don't like what you're peddling, stay out of politics, just sell us a good product, it does have an effect. So that's going on. Also, the top of the news, I detected a shift. The Fox News Radio had that whole feature on Ron DeSantis.
Yeah.
And for the past, I'd say 2 or 3 months, Fox News Radio didn't even mention Ron DeSantis. Would promote all the minor candidates, would promote Trump. So I wonder if that is something significant. So, I always like to keep an eye on what's going on there. But the main thing I'd like to talk about this morning, of course, what's going on in Atlantic City. Senator Vince Palestina will be speaking at our Liberty and Prosperity Breakfast this morning, Saturday. Of course, if you're listening on Sunday, we'll go to our website and we'll tell you what he said. So he'll be answering questions. But it really brings up a really important issue that we talk about all the time, and that's the issue of systemic corruption. We all know what corruption is. You got a bad politician who takes bribes, does bad things, gets rich at the expense of the taxpayers. But there's a professor at University of Maryland called Professor John J. Wallace came up with this whole theory of systemic corruption. And systemic corruption is where the corruption is so bad that if you don't take bribes, if you're not dishonest, you can never get elected. If you don't try to bribe politicians, you can't do business. And anyone who tries to be honest goes broke. And Professor Wallace pointed out that America is heading into that systemic corruption. And the perfect example is that $100 million bailout bill for the boardwalk. I don't know if you followed that. But Governor Murphy was in town, I guess it was last Tuesday. And the Republicans and the Democrats were all praising how wonderful it is that the state is going to be spending $100 million to reconstruct boardwalks in Wildwood and Atlantic City that are falling apart. So where's this money coming from? Well, it's coming from the $1.9 trillion COVID-19 Stimulus Act called the American Rescue Plan. And, where did that money come from? Of course, it was borrowed. During 20 years of Bush, Obama, Trump, and Biden, we added $25 trillion to the debt. It started out as $6 trillion. Now it's $25 trillion, so we have about $30 trillion of debt. We have a completely fake economy where people get rich producing nothing, where people who produce everything are paid nothing. And yet this is not a story. Nobody even talked about it. It wasn't even mentioned in the coverage of that $100 million bailout of the boardwalks. I don't know if you saw something that I didn't see.
I saw it. Yeah, I thought the same thing you did.
but then there's another thing about the corruption. So not only are we just borrowing money, creating a whole fake economy? Because obviously, if we're bailing out boardwalks here, every city is spending tons of money on something that has nothing to do with COVID or COVID relief. But then the question is, well, why are the boardwalks in Atlantic City and Wildwood falling apart? Why will it cost hundreds of millions of dollars to replace them? Because until the 1960s and 1970s, you never had a crisis like that. Every year they'd replace a certain section of the boardwalk. And so you know that the boardwalk's made out of wood. Wood lasts 15 to 20 years. So every 15 to 20 years it has to be replaced. So you do a little bit at a time. And so you're constantly doing construction. I remember I talked to someone who worked on the Walt Whitman Bridge. They said, yeah, we're always painting the bridge because by the time we get done painting it, it's time to give where we started with another paint job. It would take 10 years to paint the bridge, and the paint would last for 10 years. But anyone who owns a condominium apartment knows exactly what I'm talking about because this is the same problem. Every condominium has certain big expenses that have to be paid every 15 or 20 years. A roof, elevator, heating, air conditioner, painting and brickwork on the outside. And everybody wants low condo fees. And people who get elected to the condo board want to be popular. So there's a tendency to want to not just include that stuff in the budget. And then suddenly if something breaks down, you have a total crisis, or sometimes it's dangerous and people get killed. So Florida has a law that says every member of every condominium board, and I know this because I'm on one, you have to sign a form swearing that you read the rules and regulations, and the rules say that you have to make a list of everything in the building that's going to cost more than $10,000 to replace, and you have to swear under oath that you know how long the thing lasts, and you're putting enough money in the budget so if the thing fails, there's enough money on hand to pay for it. But we don't have that law in New Jersey. And it's a shame because the most irresponsible towns, the ones that don't plan, that don't budget, that don't fix their streets until they're falling apart, they get bailed out and rewarded with these state and federal bailouts. And while the good people who do what they're supposed to do, everybody pays higher taxes because they don't get the bailouts. So if you reward incompetence and corruption, you're going to get more of it. And I just think that in that story, people are not aware of it. And I'm sure Vince Palestina is going to say, look, I'm a hero. I brought $100 million to our boardwalks. And in a way, I guess he is a hero because if the whole system is corrupt, then if you're not as corrupt as everybody else, then you're not bringing back the bacon for your district. And so you'll get voted out of office. But that's, one of the problems we're having with our democracy today.
Yeah, I thought the same thing when I heard this thing about Banana Republic, and I talked about it in my open. It's just unbelievable where we're going with this country. I just don't know where it's going to end.
Yeah, I don't know either. Another thing, we always talk about propaganda. And if you want to know what the propaganda talking points are, all you have to do is get the local press of Atlantic City. You either get it online or it gets mailed to you a day later. But they have this thing called 360 that talks about all the top, issues of the day. And if you believe in the woke issues, this is the woke agenda, the top issues in today's press are America's not taking enough refugees, and they have all these hardship situations of these refugees from Afghanistan who can't get to America, as if our biggest problem is we don't have enough migrants. They're talking about climate change and about how we're not reporting enough deaths from too much heat, and that the Taliban are mistreating women, although they don't tell you what the word Taliban is the Urdu word for student. They won't say that this is Islamic doctrine. They're saying the Taliban. But what's really interesting, so that's the story of what they say the most important issues are this week. But meanwhile, buried in a tiny little article on A3, it says teen jailed in fatal stabbing. A 16-year-old city boy is accused of stabbing another teenager to death in an apartment Wednesday on Caspian Avenue in Atlantic City, the Atlantic County Prosecutor's Office said. The teenager, identified as TC, is charged with murder, unlawful possession of a weapon, and possession of a weapon for an unlawful purpose. The victim, age 16, died at Atlantic Care Regional Medical Center after being stabbed in the chest. So how come, it's not a big issue that you have 16-year-olds are stabbing and killing each other? Where are the leadership? Where's the black community? Where's the outrage? And these just get buried in footnotes in the newspaper. And that just shows propaganda is just not telling a lie. Propaganda is putting all the attention on issues that promote a certain agenda and completely ignoring much more important issues that don't point to an agenda. So I think that's worth talking about.
Boy, you got a lot to talk about today.
And I just want to close it with this. So you can see how Democrats, or woke Democrats, it's not only cost you in money, taxes, and high prices, it's deadly. People are getting killed because Democrats don't want to address the real issues that are killing people, and the media covers it up. And nowhere is that better shown than what happened in Hawaii last week. One of the things the media doesn't tell you is that Hawaii is probably the most solidly radical left woke Democrat area of the country, even more left than New York and California. And there's a whole backstory to that. We all know, or any historian knows, that Chicago has been the worldwide center of radical left socialist and communist politics for 150 years. If you saw the movie Reds with Warren Beatty, the conventions in Chicago, the whole communist May Day holiday started in Chicago. What we don't know, or a lot of people don't know, is in the late 1940s, your top leftist leaders, including Frank Marshall Davis, who was the communist leader in Chicago, who was a close friend of Obama's mom and grandparents, they left Chicago and they went to Honolulu, Hawaii in the late 1940s. And I didn't even realize this until I looked it up on Wikipedia. There's a whole listing for the Democrat Revolution of 1954 in Hawaii. As soon as those Chicago radicals get to Hawaii, all hell breaks loose in Hawaii. There's riots, there's arrests, there's strikes, there's complete turmoil. And in the end, in 1954, the radical left-wing branch of the Democratic Party takes political control of Hawaii, and they've been running Hawaii ever since. Now, what does that have to do with the fires you had there? Well, under total Democrat control since 1954, at first the media said that, well, this is caused by climate change. But suddenly the media stopped reporting that. Now why is that? Because it turns out that every year there's a dry season, and this season was actually wetter than the last couple of years. So drought had nothing to do with it. The second thing that they didn't report was Maui, this island, has 400 loud warning sirens on the island to warn about fires, volcanoes, and tsunami tidal waves. But they were never sounded, and they won't tell you who the officials were who didn't sound them. No one's being held responsible for it. They also so these people had no idea the fire was approaching their homes until they look out and they see the smoke and they see the flames in the distance. But normally they thought that if there was a real danger, they'd get warning from these 400 loud sirens that you could hear anywhere on the island. The other thing the media didn't report, at least I didn't see it, was that hundreds of people ran into the ocean, but that was the only way to escape their flames, but there were no boats to rescue them, and that many drowned or died of hypothermia. If you know that the only way away from a fire is the ocean, and we have a Coast Guard and we have Marine Police and all this stuff, where were the boats? And by the way, the media doesn't mention that the grass was not cut below the power lines, the same thing that caused the fires in California, because the budget for cutting the grass was spent on renewable energy and climate change.
Jeez.
And by the way, there was when the fires first started, they wanted to release a water supply to fight the fires, but the head of that department thought it would interfere with the ecology of the island and didn't release the water to fight the fires. So there you see that Democrat agenda is deadly, and if everybody knew the direct connection between these woke Democrat politics and probably 500 to 1,000 people dying from this fire, there'd be an outrage, but the media is sort of covering all that up.
Boy, oh boy. I heard all that stuff, and I really, somebody's got to pay for that, you know.
Or will they? But you notice how it's suddenly off the headlines, or suddenly the headlines. You notice every news story you heard about it said would just be in general terms. They would say, well, there are complaints that officials. I believe that the Biden administration is sending emergency aid and is considering whether officials could have done more. But there's no reporting. If this had been, say, a Republican state with say, Governor DeSantis, and this stuff happened, you even saw how the media tried to blame Governor DeSantis for the 56 deaths because of that bad hurricane that hit Fort Myers. Even though they gave every possible warning, and the people who didn't leave because they didn't want to leave. But here, where the people had no clue, not one report anywhere hinting there's a connection between the Democratic Party regime running Hawaii and these deaths. And I'm pleased to note that that looks like I'll get to the meeting on time today because I had everything I wanted to say. I guess the final point is Richard Summers. Every year, Liberty and Prosperity remembers our local hero, Richard Summers, who died on September 4th, 1804, fighting America's first war against Islamic terror. And because his story is not politically correct, his story is no longer taught in our schools. You don't see him in Hollywood movies. Completely canceled from history, but we keep him alive in our memory. And so if you go to our website, we have the event at the Richard Summers statue at 4 o'clock on September 4th. We have a fundraiser to pay the expense of promoting it 1 hour later at Sal's Cafe. But right now I'm on my way to Sal's Cafe in Summers Point for our 9:30 to 10:30 Saturday morning breakfast. In this week, Senator Vince Palestina will be speaking to us. Thank you, and have a great week.
Okay, Seth, thank you. Seth Grossman, Liberty and Prosperity, the website, libertyandprosperity.com. And, of course, he's headed to the meeting, which happens every Saturday at 9:30 at Sal's Coal Fire Pizza. It is Talk with a Purpose every Saturday, 9 till noon, WPG Talk Radio 95.5. We'll get started with our callers. We have John, we have Craig, we have Bob and Al in that order, and maybe you at 609-407-1450. We'll get started. Talk with a Purpose in just a moment.
When it comes to you and your family's financial wellness, there are so many things to talk about. We could go on forever. To help guide you along the way, Joe Yakovich has written a book called The Heart of Your Money, Inspiration for Financial Wellness. In the book, Joe talks about longevity, inflation, retirement surprises, and many other topics. For your free copy of The Heart of Your Money, call the office of Joe Yakovich at JML Financial at 856-751-1771 or email Joe at jyakovich@brokersifs.com. For over 37 years, Joe Yakovich has been helping families throughout the area navigate the difficulties of a sound financial plan. You'll find Joe's approach to be different and not just the cookie-cutter methods that are prevalent in today's world. The path to your financial wellness and or retirement starts with a call to Joe Yakovich at JML Financial Group. 856-751-1771. 856-751-1771. Or email Joe at jyakovich@brokersifs.com. Joe Yakovich is registered with, and securities and investment advisory services are offered through Brokers International Financial Services, LLC. Member SIPC. Brokers International Financial Services, LLC is not an affiliated company.
And we are back here on Talk with a Purpose. We're going to get started with phone calls, so here we go. John in Ocean City. John, good morning. Welcome to Talk with a Purpose.
Yes, good morning. This is a sort of kind of, now this is a rebuttal of DJ's assessment about what happened on January 6th, 2021, regarding Air Force veteran, not Army veteran, but Air Force veteran Ashley Babbitt. Now she was shot down and killed that day. She was shot down and killed that day. This is from the Department of Justice. Now, not supposedly, or it is believed, and I'm in that company of people that believe that he violated 18 U.S.C. 242. 18 U.S.C. 242 is willfully deprive a person of a right or privilege protected by the Constitution or laws of the United States. So her constitutional right to be alive was violated. Anyway, you believe it or not, I think the whole thing was a setup. But here, USCP, that being Capitol Police officers, used furniture to barricade a set of glass doors separating the hallway and Speaker's lobby to try and stop the mob from entering the Speaker's lobby and the chamber. The three officers positioned themselves between the doors and the mob. Members of the mob attempted to break through the doors by striking them and breaking the glass. Now, she slipped through the broken glass of the door and was shot in the left shoulder by this Capitol policeman, and she was killed. Now this wasn't on another scene shows Capitol Police inviting protesters into the Capitol building, and it wasn't caught on a hidden security surveillance video camera hidden in some stairwell in the Capitol building. No, it was open footage, open audio, video footage of Capitol Police waving protesters into the building. Now, you're going to tell me those Capitol Police were wrong. Okay, they were wrong, but they couldn't be stopped. It wasn't caught. Again, it wasn't caught on some hidden camera footage. It was open air footage of these Capitol Police inviting the protesters into the Capitol building. So you mean to tell me some armed Capitol policemen can shoot down a pedestrian, an unarmed pedestrian, but they couldn't stop those they couldn't stop those cops from letting those protesters into the building? Also, there's unarmed protesters outside of the Capitol building that never went inside that are still sitting in Washington, D.C. gulags right now. Also, Nancy Pelosi refused President Trump's request. There was a request and urging of the National Guard to be sent there, and they were not sent there. So the whole thing smacks of a setup. Now, if it wasn't a setup like I think it was a total setup, and we fell for it. And it's okay to bring up the fact that the woman was an armed veteran, an armed forces veteran, because they'll never stop bringing up the fact that she was a QAnon and all, she was pro QAnon and pro MAGA. And I'm not pro QAnon, but I'm not against people that were. But not that being said, the left will never bring up William Byrd, a Grand Kleagle of the Ku Klux Klan, and him being a mentor to many of these Democrat politicians. I'll never bring that up. But they'll bring up anybody that supports President Trump as being some type of criminal. So all these people that protested on January 6th are criminals. But meanwhile, Ray Epps didn't do a day in jail, and now they're all of a sudden they're bringing charges against the guy. But how come he wasn't arrested on the spot? So Ray Epps was an instigator. Nancy Pelosi didn't allow National Guard in. Capitol Police were inviting protesters into the building, so the whole thing smacks as a setup to me. But if it wasn't a setup, then DJ might have a point. But I think it was a setup. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Thanks for the call. You know, that brings up a point which I've emailed a couple of callers. And, you know, a lot of times people bring up conflicting points of view. And maybe we should have debates here on the show between one caller and another. That would be interesting, wouldn't it? But John is saying that DJ was wrong, so we'll see. Talk with a Purpose is the show, Saturdays 9 till noon, WPG Talk Radio 95.5. Craig, Bob, and Al in that order, and maybe you at 609-407-1450. We'll get back to more of Talk with a Purpose in just a moment, but first, we want to tell you about B.F. Mazzeo. Yes, B.F. Mazzeo, the finest fresh fruit and produce you'll find anywhere. B.F. Mazzeo, of course, is likely will be nominated for Best Produce Store and Best Gift Baskets. But it's more than that. It's gourmet items. It's prepared foods. It's baked goods. It's everything. One-stop shopping at B.F. Mazzeo. In fact, the other week, I walked by one of the freezers and I saw sirloin steak and salmon. So, I mean, you could conceivably get the entire meal at B.F. Mazzeo. BF Mazzeo, 601 New Road, Northfield, online at bfmazzeo.com. And you want to sign up for the text messaging club? Yes, you'll get text message specials and coupons and all that stuff. All you have to do is text your number to 855-910-1246, and you are part of the text messaging club. It's all right there for you. BF Mazzeo, 601 New Road in Northfield, and again, online at bfmazzeo.com, bfmazzeo.com. You will be pleasantly surprised if you've never shopped there. I mean, there's just all kinds of items in that store, just too numerous to mention. BF Mazzeo, 601 New Road, Northfield, and online at bfmazzeo.com. Coming back with more Talk with a Purpose in just a moment.
If you're interested in driving one of the finest automobiles on the market today, then you'll want to check out all of the fabulous new and pre-owned Lexus at Lexus of Atlantic City. Lexus of Atlantic City, 3169 Fire Road in EHT. Driving a Lexus is like no other vehicle on the market. Test drive one for yourself at Lexus of Atlantic City. Whether it's new or pre-owned, you'll be more than satisfied. In fact, Lexus is consistently number one when it comes to customer satisfaction. Visit Lexus of Atlantic City, 3169 Fire Road in EHT. Or you can check out their outstanding selection of new, pre-owned, and L-certified pre-owned vehicles on their website, LexusofAtlanticCity.com. That's LexusofAtlanticCity.com. Or, if you want more information, call 609-641-0008. Lexus of Atlantic City, now celebrating their 26th year in the area. A dealership that you'll enjoy. No pressure, no gimmicks, no hassle, no hype. Lexus of Atlantic City, 3169 Fire Road in EHT. And remember, always online at LexusofAtlanticCity.com.
Your WPG Talk Radio 95.5 AccuWeather forecast for South Jersey. A beautiful start to the weekend today with lots of sunshine and less humidity. The high today 81. It'll be clear tonight with a low 56. Tomorrow's a mostly sunny, hotter day. We're going up to 90. And then we start the week on Monday with sunshine mixing with clouds. It'll be hot and humid. Monday's high 95. I'm AccuWeather's Rose Tamburino on WPG Talk Radio 95.5.
Back here on Talk with a Purpose. If you miss any of today's show, we always have the Talk with a Purpose replay every Sunday, 5 until 8, right here on WPG Talk Radio 95.5. So if you miss a few things, you can catch it tomorrow, 5 until 8 every Sunday. Talk with a Purpose replay right here, WPG Talk Radio 95.5. We are going to the phones again. Craig in Northfield. Craig, good morning. Welcome to Talk with a Purpose.
Good morning, John. How are you?
I'm good. How about you?
Yeah. Well, you know, I'm doing pretty good. Food is up 20%. Right?
Jeez. Yeah.
And I just realized and heard that, you know, people that are making $56,000 that 40% of their income has to go just to housing now.
Yeah.
40%.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the new wave, did you hear about the new wave in California?
No.
The mortgages?
No.
A 60-year mortgage.
Whoa.
Whoa. Yeah, those houses are $1 million. This way you get to pay. Can you imagine remember if you had $120,000 mortgage, you pay $360, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
$1 million, you're paying $3 million back to the bank.
Yeah.
And that's a big problem. So the inflation, as you can see, is just there's no inflation.
Yeah.
But
how anybody could vote for Biden? I mean,
oh, come on, John.
I mean, but there are people who will, like my cousin. She'll vote for him.
You know, John, 81,000 votes. Just remember that. I'm still looking for these bumper stickers left over because if you recall, you know, when Trump was, you know, elected, there was leftovers.
Yeah.
And you know there was plenty of leftovers from the Obama 2 elections. Am I wrong?
No.
You would see them. But
yeah.
How many Biden stickers do you see?
None, not too many.
None. So, you know, I have to say, I was proud of Seth today. He was mum on the word Trump today. Thank you, Seth.
Well, so, he gets some backlash from his constituents over at Liberty and Prosperity. So,
as he should. And I want you to understand some of the implications that are going on here. You know, we got Bill Barr, right, down there talking about an anklet bracelet for Donald J. Trump. Did you hear that?
I didn't hear that one. No.
No, absolutely yes. So what they're talking about, I don't think you understand here. This implication down in Georgia is very big, and if Donald Trump becomes guilty, the Republican Party may have to make a reversal, and this could be a very difficult situation here, John. I want you to understand.
Yeah,
Sure, you know, there's no even if he becomes president and he gets convicted. He can't give himself a pardon because this is a state thing, not a federal thing.
Yeah, that's right.
Are you aware of that?
Yes, I'm aware of that, yeah.
Okay. So, anyway, we got this week coming up. We got the big debate.
Yeah, that should be interesting.
Well, I'm kind of wondering if it's going to be interesting and who's going to be watching it, because I think that day that Donald J. Trump is going to fly into Georgia and get his bracelets put on. I mean, picture taken.
Really?
Yeah, I think he's going to go in and go in that on Wednesday, and then breaking news. It appears that Tucker's going to interview him while the debate's going on. So I'm going to ask you. So you got Chris Christie, you got DeSantis, you got the woman down there in the Carolinas, Scott, a couple other people there. Who do you think's going to be watched?
Trump.
I'm saving that one for Bob. You understand? Bob, there's a problem down there. You know, like I said last week, that Trump has sucked out the oxygen of the room. And I agree with Bob. We're in peril here because our government is not acting appropriately, John.
No.
I mean, just imagine. Everybody, look, how long did the Clintons walk around saying that the election wasn't right?
Yeah. They did.
Did she get arrested?
No.
And that's what's going on here.
Yeah.
So if you said that this listen, he had, in my opinion, he had every reason to do that. If you say that, we don't have a democracy right now.
No, we don't.
Do you believe that?
No, I said that in the beginning of the show. I mean, this is really, it's questionable what kind of government we have.
Your job's in jeopardy.
Yeah.
Your job as a talk radio host is in jeopardy. Harry Hurley's radio program is in jeopardy because free speech will be in jeopardy.
That's
because
right.
You wouldn't be able to talk about that.
That's
Am
right.
I wrong?
You're right. No, you are right.
Okay, so I'd like to speak to our congressman right now. You need to stand up tougher, and I appreciate you. Oh, I do. Congressman Van Drew, I appreciate you. But now we're in the ring. We got to bloody some noses now. You know, we have the power. It's time to let them know who's in charge and that this is no longer acceptable. We need to take the money, and you need to put the FBI and the Department of Justice and stop them dead cold in their tracks without any cash. So be it. They don't arrest any of their people, but they sure arresting every single Republican that there is.
Yeah.
And you know what? This is a problem.
Yeah.
I'll leave you with that, John.
Okay.
Thank you for allowing me to come on.
Thanks for the call, Craig. Appreciate it. And speaking of Bob, Bob and Cape May. Bob, good morning. Welcome to Talk with a Purpose.
I'll tell you, Craig and I agree on a lot of points. I mean, all the Trump indictments are total fraud.
Yes.
The election interference is based solely by the Democrats, and really our Supreme Court should get involved. They should end all this, delay all these trials until after the election. This is pure election interference. And John, you know, I want this election to be decided not by some bogus criminal prosecutors, Democrat prosecutors. I want this election to be decided by issues. And, you know, I think our guy, Governor DeSantis, his fall in the polls is totally simultaneous with all these indictments.
Yes.
Now, we could say this is engineered by the Democrats, that the Democrats really want to run against Trump. We could say that. We don't know that for sure. You know, I don't really know what's going on for sure.
What's that?
Sorry about that, John.
That's your cell phone.
This girl calls me. But anyway, look, point I want to make here, John, is this here. You know, the question, and Craig talked about this earlier. You know, I just want to pose this question to a lot of the callers today. What are you going to do? Are you going to watch the Trump interview with Tucker, or are you going to watch the Republican debate? Okay?
Yeah.
What I'm going to do is watch the Trump interview with Tucker. I'm going to tape the Republican debate, okay? So I'm hedging my answer a little bit.
Yeah.
But see, I think, I know, look, I got wind that this interview was going to occur with Tucker a couple days ago. So I got a text. You know, I have communication with Tucker. All right, he lives in the same area I live in the winter. All right, not far from me. And anyway, Wednesday, Trump and Tucker were having lunch. So I kind of knew this is what they were going. They were finalizing the interview.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, point is though, I think Tucker's going to ask him tougher questions than he would have gotten from a lot of these challengers. I really do.
Yeah.
And it'll be interesting what Trump answers. You know, Tucker really loves Trump. He's going to be fair with Trump. But I think I sent you
you did.
couple pages, right?
Yes.
From the biography that Chadwick Moore wrote on Trump. Okay. And in there, you know, Trump says, yeah, I love Trump, but there are many levels to Trump.
Yes.
And that as president, Trump was completely ineffectual, and that I wouldn't trust Trump to run my household. Okay?
I saw that.
That's what he said.
Yeah, I saw that.
Now, he said a lot of other great things. Now, and I'm taking that, maybe I could be accused of taking that out of context, but the point being here is that, you know, I think we're going to get a pretty interesting interview on Wednesday. And I give Trump all the credit in the world for get going with this interview. I think it's a great move by both of them. Fox News gets it where they deserve. Fox News is going to have their ratings destroyed, which is great in my opinion.
That's right.
For the way they treated Tucker. And I think it's a smart move on President Trump's part, because, you know, if he attended the debate, all the guns will be pointed at him.
Right.
So, you know, it's a smart move. I'm glad to see that Trump is doing some really smart things now. I'm really, that is encouraging to me. Okay?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
But, you know, like I said, you know, before, I really think that this election cycle, let's forget these indictments. Okay, we're focusing on the wrong things. I hope the Supreme Court can excuse me for that, John.
That's okay.
But anyway, the Supreme Court really needs to get rid of this. Look, one thing I want to call back at 10 o'clock hour. John, in his first call, is absolutely right. DJ's totally out of bounds with his conclusion that the Ashley Babbitt killing was totally justified. That is ludicrous. It's just totally ludicrous. I'm going to call back on that one.
Okay. All right, Bob. All right. Thanks for the call. You'll call back. Sure. That's okay. Talk with the purposes of the show. Saturdays, 9 till noon, WPG, Talk Radio 95.5. I'm John DeMasi. We have Al in Corbin City after the break. Maybe we'll have you at 609-407-1450. Coming back. Final thoughts in hour number 1 after these words.
When it comes to you and your family's financial wellness, there are so many things to talk about. We could go on forever. To help guide you along the way, Joe Yakovich has written a book called The Heart of Your Money, Inspiration for Financial Wellness. In the book, Joe talks about longevity, inflation, retirement surprises, and many other topics. For your free copy of The Heart of Your Money, call the office of Joe Yakovich at JML Financial at 856-751-1771 or email Joe at jyakovich@brokersifs.com. For over 37 years, Joe Yakovich has been helping families throughout the area navigate the difficulties of a sound financial plan. You'll find Joe's approach to be different and not just the cookie-cutter methods that are prevalent in today's world. The path to your financial wellness and or retirement starts with a call to Joe Yakovich at JML Financial Group. 856-751-1771. 856-751-1771. Or email Joe at jyakovich@brokersifs.com. Joe Yakovich is registered with and securities and investment advisory services are offered through Brokers International Financial Services, LLC. Member SIPC. Brokers International Financial Services, LLC is not an affiliated company.
Back here on Talk with a Purpose, 609-407-1450 is our number here in the studio. Let's talk to Al in Corbin City. Al, good morning. Welcome to Talk with a Purpose.
How are you doing this morning?
Good. How about you?
I can't complain. I'm torn about that Catholic firing.
Yes.
Because in one sense, I hate the government being involved in the church at all. And I'm not particularly Catholic, though I am. I go to church every Sunday as much as I can, because in my profession it's a little hard. But I'm torn. I agree with you. It seems very unfair.
Yes.
But on the other hand, I like the idea that keeping the state out of the how the church handles something like that.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I understand. But I just thought, we went through this in the 60s, the Catholic Church, premarital sex. And now here's a woman who says, hey, I'm engaged. Okay. I'm pregnant, but I'm engaged to the baby's father, and they fire her. I mean,
I agree with you. It's not, 100%. I know in my church we would applaud the fact that she was getting married.
Yes, that's what I thought.
The other part of it, as a libertarian too, I mean. I like to keep the government out of decisions that churches make.
Yes,
and that's the part that I kind of agree with him on.
Yeah,
I don't agree a lot with the Supreme Court of New Jersey because it's a very liberal Supreme Court.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
All right. Well, have a wonderful day.
You too, Al. You too. Thanks for the call. Well, there was a tough question, but. I just think that what happened to separation of church and state? That was all my point was. That here we have the Supreme Court of New Jersey getting involved in this. That is what question I had about the whole thing. Tony in AC. Tony, good morning. Welcome to Talk with a Purpose.
Well, thank you. Thank you for taking my call.
Thank you.
I was listening to Rita Cosby and her partner Katz. Are you familiar with them? Cosby and Katz on 84 WOR?
Vaguely familiar with them.
Rita Cosby's been on I drove her once. I'm a limo driver.
Okay.
And this is for all your audience, we're very high tech. She was discussing this gentleman who had claims to have video evidence of hand signals during the January 6th riots. Or that, Jim Jordan says that there were like 45 undercover agents at that scene.
Yeah.
Right? Now, I'm talking to you and your audience because I'm barely able to use a phone, and I just upgraded so I can, when I go on to walk in the boardwalk, I can get your radio station. So
Good.
To me, that's like an Einstein moment,
Yeah.
So Rita Cosby and Katz, she mentioned something like he's going to release this information soon, and there was like an MD4 podcast or the gentleman's name I don't know. So I'm authorizing you.
Okay.
Under the Limo Authorization Act, Limo Authorized Act, for you and your audience to try to find out the gentleman's name when he's going to release this supposed information. But he said they were using, he's a video analyst. That's what Rita was saying. He's a guy that analyzes half second by minute, half second of the whole scenario of the riot. And I enjoy your show, and I get to listen, and I put it out there, and I hope we'll get some results.
Okay. Well, thank you for giving me the Limo Act. That's a new one. Hey, you listen to this show, you never know what's going to happen. But hand signals, huh? That's a new one. Well, we'll check that out. Talk for the purposes of the show, Saturdays 9 till noon, WPG Talk Radio 95.5. Hour number 1 rapidly coming to a close. In hour number 2, I guess it's going to be all Donald Trump all the time. Another survey, and we'll talk about that. And, he's going to be interviewed by Tucker at the same time the debate is on. But there's nothing he's going to gain, in my opinion, by attending that debate. So he's going to do his own thing with Tucker, and that's fine. But we're going to talk about that. And also, speaking of people trying to get Trump, there was a Canadian woman, and we're going to talk about that. She tried to poison President Trump while he was in the White House. And she is going to jail for 22 years. That's right, 22 years. I tell you, there's all kinds of crazies out there. Really. And when you hear how she made this poison, it's unbelievable how people come up with these things. But she did, and now she is going to pay the price. Talk for the purpose of the show, Saturdays 9 till noon, WPG Talk Radio 95.5, hour number 1 in the books. Hour number 2 is on the way, and don't forget hour number 3. Author Jack Cashel wrote the book Untenable. Very interesting book, and we'll talk to him as well. Hour number 2 on the way. Don't go away.
.5 FM and 1450 AM WPGG Atlantic City, WENJ HD3 Millville, a Town Square media station. WPG Talk Radio 95.5 presents Talk with a Purpose. Join the conversation by calling 609-407-1450. Now, the host of Talk with a Purpose, John DeMasi.
Hour number 2, Talk with a Purpose, every Saturday, 9 till noon, WPG Talk Radio 95.5, also heard on 1450 AM and online at WPGTalkRadio.com, WPGTalkRadio.com. People always tell me I don't give out my email often enough, so I'll give it out. JDADV1@Comcast.net. So you can email me anytime. JDADV1@Comcast.net. Hour number 2 underway, and we got a lot to talk about here on the show, mostly Trump stuff. Another survey, and it shows, as we would expect, that Donald Trump has a commanding lead for the Republican nomination and a lead in the general election among Republicans. But hold on. In a crucial warning sign for the former president, President Trump faces glaring vulnerabilities heading into a general election. Most Republicans, 74%, say they would support him. However, 53% of Americans say they would definitely not support him if he is the nominee. An additional 11% say they would probably not support him in November 2024. So let's see. 53 and 11 is 64. It doesn't look good here, doing the math. And we've talked about this before. Does this mean that there are alternatives to Trump as far as the Republican nomination is concerned? These findings may bolster that support, but or is 4 indictments, no matter how flimsy we think they are they too much for many? And I'm going to do something now that I never thought I'd do. As Chris Christie has said many times, I must have got up on the wrong side of the bed. I'm quoting Chris Christie. Donald Trump cannot win the general election. And maybe this survey points it out. But then again, let's go back to 2016. Every survey, every day said Hillary would win. And that didn't happen. So you don't really know. I mean, there are people like my cousin who wouldn't vote for Trump if he was the only candidate there. The poll was conducted August 10th to 14th. It's a question that will be a question up until the election in November of 2024. That, how much do you pay attention to these surveys? Look, a lot of people have said, I wouldn't vote for Trump if he was the last one standing, and there are those who say that. And there are those who say he's a dictator, all of that stuff. All of that, it goes on and on. But who do we listen to? I mean, could you imagine another 4 years of Biden or of a Democrat? We won't have a country left. We were just talking about on the traffic report. He was saying $50 feeds a family of 4 for a month. In what world is that? $50 feeds a family of 4. I spend more than that, and I'm one person at the supermarket. So it's inflation, and the Biden administration is just going crazy with that. How could anybody in their right mind vote for Biden or a Democrat? I mean, just think of the facts. Don't look at, I don't like Trump. No, let's look at the facts. And the facts are we better off now than we were a couple of years ago? No.
Thank you.
So how could we just vote for a Democrat? That's why this thing is it's crazy. Thinking about these surveys, and look, there's going to be another couple of surveys. There's going to be surveys upon surveys. Look, Trump's got the Republicans. It's the ones, and I've said this before, that's not the ones that he's got to worry about. He's got to worry about those people that don't actually think he's all that. The marginal voters. That's what he's got to concentrate on. 609-407-1450. 609-407-1450. Let's go back to the phones. John in Ocean City. John, good morning. Welcome back. Jane. Oh, Jane. Oh, I'm sorry.
Jane, yeah, that's okay. No, I'm not transitioning. I just, I don't get to call talk radio very often, but there's a couple points I wanted to mention because I did listen to your show last week, but I didn't get to listen to it till Sunday night, so that's one of them. But first of all, Seth Grossman missed a perfect opportunity because when they ask me in a survey, what's your race, I say human. Leave nowhere to go. It absolutely flabbergasts them. Now, about the Catholic school, the young lady who was pregnant, I think they had every right to fire her because here's the situation. She had been a student at that school.
Yes.
And then she was working as a substitute teacher, and when they asked her to be a part of the permanent staff, that's when she disclosed it. But she also had to sign a pledge that the school requires of all their teachers that they understand the rules and the stipulations of that school, all the religious rules and everything. So she knew what the rules were. And if the rule is you cannot be unmarried and pregnant, as unreasonable as that might seem to some of us, that's the rule. And you have to, as any sports team or any business office, you have to play by the rules. And so, I might think it was a little harsh, but at the same time, I think they had absolutely every right to fire her.
Yeah, but it was discriminatory.
Well,
and that's what I was pointing out, that there's anti-discrimination laws, and did they violate that? That's the question.
I think you would determine that if they allowed other unwed pregnant teachers on the staff, or by extension, if they allowed male teachers on the staff who were unmarried, living with a pregnant or a partner with children. But if that applied to everybody equally, all on the staff, no matter what your age was, no matter what your race was, anything, then I don't think it's discrimination. I think it's simply having the right to set your own rules and standards as you do in any business place.
Yeah. You're right about that, but I just got this thing in my head that, I don't know, maybe it's the Catholic Church.
Well, there are a lot of problems with the Catholic Church, and, I'm former Catholic. I totally get it, but and the third point I wanted to bring up is last week there was a discussion about Ocean City and the doubling of the salaries for city council. Now, I live in Ocean City. I've lived here for 38 years, homeowner, resident for a long time. And I do agree that I think it's unreasonable to double these salaries because I think what they are really is stipends. They're not salaries. These are all wage-earning, working people whose source of income is through their job.
Yes.
And this is somebody online referred to it as their side hustle.
Yes.
So I certainly think a stipend is in order, but to double it to the point where the mayor makes $40,000 a year, I think is unreasonable in this economy. But Ocean City, we are not a bedroom community. People, we're discussing it as if Ocean City is this trivial community that has no year-round residents. We have no community. We have nothing. We're just kind of this, bedroom community for rich people from Philadelphia, and that's really not the case.
No, it isn't.
No. It's a small community, but it's more thriving, I think, because we do, unlike other communities in the area, we have a K-12 school system. We have a lot of churches. We have very good police and EMT departments and fire departments, and so it is a small town, but it's not a bedroom community by any standard. And last, I compliment you for bringing on Jack Cashel, because the other night he was on C-SPAN discussing this book, and I have to get it. I wound up watching the whole interview on C-SPAN. He is a wonderful writer, and he wrote one of the best biographies of Muhammad Ali. It's called Sucker Punch, and I recommend that. And I also recommend a book he wrote called If I Had a Son, about the Trayvon Martin case, because he analyzed and deconstructed that case like nobody else did and really separated fact from media fiction. Both wonderful books, and this book is definitely on my I am going to buy it list.
Yes, I read it. I read it, and I couldn't put it down over the past week, so it's a good book. Jane, thank you for the call. Appreciate it. Bob and Cape May. Bob, good morning. Welcome to Talk with a Purpose.
Hey, John. Look, I want to talk about the January 6th Ashley Babbitt killing. She was 5'2", weighed 110 pounds, never had a criminal record. And, yeah, I saw the film also, and there had to be another way of restraining or preventing that woman from getting inside I guess it was the Senate chamber, other than using deadly force. You know, this cop, Michael Byrd, whose identity was kept from the public for a long, long time. This guy was a bad cop. That's the real explanation. He left a loaded gun in a men's room. I think he lost the gun in the Capitol. A loaded gun. Okay, that by itself should have been grounds for firing him years ago before he was able to commit this unjustified killing. You know, I would love to have DJ go in front of Ashley Babbitt's family and pronounce how justified that killing was. You know, it just seems like he always goes on the side of the police. Police can do no wrong. Well, in this case, this cop did plenty wrong. Right? There was just no way that this woman was going to. She just did. There was no justification at all. I just don't see it, and I think 99.9% of the people that see the evidence will come to the same conclusion. I really do. You know, this January 6th, the whole January 6th situation was a pure setup. It was a setup to destroy Donald Trump.
Yeah.
It really was.
Yeah.
I mean, the interview that Tucker did with William Sund, the police chief of the Capitol Police, is very revealing. This guy was made the scapegoat. Why was he a scapegoat? Because he was never given any of the intelligence that predicted all the big trouble that was going to occur. Never given it. The FBI didn't share anything with him, and he had numerous calls with the FBI. Military intelligence knew what was going on. General Milley was sending the National Guard to protect the homes of the generals in D.C., but not the Capitol. There were 150 to 175 National Guardsmen within eyesight of the Capitol when the fighting started. They were not allowed to deploy to the Capitol. In fact, they were told to go back to the Armory, which was to the other side of Washington. And then they were not allowed. The National Guard was not allowed to go to the Capitol until 6 p.m. after the fighting, after everything was done, It's amazing. And this police chief, William Sund, was made the scapegoat. He was fired a day or two after this happened. Before January 6th, 2-3 days before, numerous times he requested the National Guard. He made that request to Mayor Washington, denied. Pentagon, denied. All right? So, you know, as I said, it was a pure setup. They knew that trouble was going to brew. The New Jersey State Police beat the D.C. National Guard to the Capitol on January 6th. New Jersey State Police. So, you know, I mean, this all could have been prevented. Pelosi would not grant the request for the National Guard help days before when the Capitol police chief, he's in charge of protecting the Capitol. Pelosi would not grant this. The sergeant of arms who did what Pelosi told her to do, the sergeant of arms of the House of Representatives, told this police chief when he requested the National Guard, he said, "I'll run it up the chain of command." Well, the chain of command is Pelosi. And she knew what was going to happen. You know, she knew. Milley was warning McConnell and Pelosi that this was going to happen, that there was going to be trouble. They had the intelligence, you know. So, you know, It's all there. It's all there.
Yeah.
The woman who was the chief of intelligence for the Capitol Police. She kept this police chief out of the loop. She kept them out of the loop. She was given the information. Right. Hardcore Democrat, ally of Pelosi. What happened? She was promoted to the Capitol Hill police chief position for 3 months, and then she was given a very, very high-paying position as the chief of police for the Berkeley University across the bay from Pelosi's district.
Jeez.
That was the reward. Okay, so it's
oh man.
But poor Ashley Babbitt. You know what? Yeah. She took a shot, and this poor woman died unnecessarily. Yeah. And it's amazing that DJ can come up with that kind of a conclusion. It's just amazing.
Well, I hope he calls.
John.
Okay, thanks for the call, Bob. I hope DJ calls because a couple of people are calling him out today, and he's not even here. Talk with a Purpose is the show, Saturdays 9 till noon, WPG Talk Radio 95.5. I'm John DeMasi. We have Tom, Linda, and Joan in that order coming up after the break, and maybe we'll have you at 609-407-1450, 609-407-1450. Back with more Talk with a Purpose in just a moment. Well, as you probably know, I miss my Lexus. I've been driving Brand X. I mean, it's really Brand X. It's like Brand Z. It's a rental car, and my car's in the shop being repaired. But, that's when you really miss it, when you don't have it. Lexus of Atlantic City, of course, 3169 Fire Road in EHT. Right now, it's the Golden Opportunity Sales Event. It's happening until Labor Day. What does that mean, Golden Opportunity? Well, it means just what it says. It's a golden opportunity for you to get into a Lexus at special deals, special prices, special financing, all of that. At Lexus of Atlantic City, 3169 Fire Road in EHT. In fact, if you go over there right now, Helen's probably talking to somebody about a Lexus, but get in line. She'll talk to you as well. 3169 Fire Road, EHT. And, of course, online at aclexus.com, aclexus.com. You can go online first before you go over there, and you check out the lineup of cars, and you'll see it, the SUVs and the sedans and the sports cars and all of that. You can check that out, see which one fits into what your budget happens to be, and you go from there. 3169 Fire Road is the address. Lexus of Atlantic City is the place. Tell them that John DeMasi sent you, and they'll be happy to see you. Believe me. 3169 Fire Road, EHT, and online at aclexus.com. We're coming back with more Talk with a Purpose in just a moment.
I'm Seth Grossman for LibertyAndProsperity.com. Richard Summers grew up in Summers Point when George Washington was president. By age 20, Summers had completed school, mastered a trade, and was starting his career as a merchant ship captain. But then sea fighters from North Africa went to war against America because we were non-believers who did not pay them tribute. They attacked every American ship they could find. They captured everyone on board, brought them back to Africa, and sold them into slavery. Richard Summers joined America's new Navy to stop them. On September 4th, 1804, Richard Summers died fighting them by the shores of Tripoli. His remarkable story was once told to every school child in America. But today, Richard Summers is canceled and forgotten. Please join me and our group to remember him on the day he died, September 4th, Labor Day at 4 o'clock. Meet us by his statue and mural by the library at Shore Road in Summers Point. Contact me for details or visit LibertyAndProsperity.com. Thanks.
Back here on Talk with a Purpose, we just want to remind you that we have a new feature. Well, it's not new. It's relatively new. It's called Talk with a Purpose on Demand. I like that, you know? I mean, TV has it. Why can't we? You just Google John DeMasi podcasts and all the shows come up. It's that simple. There's like 180 some shows. You can listen to any of them anytime, anywhere, as long as you have a device. Simple. John DeMasi podcast, that's what you Google, and all the shows come up. It's our radio on demand. Talk with a Purpose is the show, Saturdays 9 till noon, WPG Talk Radio 95.5. Let's talk to Tom in Little Egg. Tom, good morning. Welcome to Talk with a Purpose.
This isn't Tom. This is Frank from Dent.
Oh, Frank. Okay.
Yeah. Hey, John. I'll be Tom if you want.
No, he has Tom on here. Where did you get Tom? Where did you get Tom out of Frank?
Maybe I'm mumbling too much.
I don't know. Go ahead, Frank.
John, you mentioned the marginal voter earlier, right? The undecided, the independents.
Yes.
Who, I'm pretty certain they're going to decide the election again.
Yes.
This year.
Yes.
And what I can't understand is a segment of people on the right, Republicans, that want to keep open this discussion of January 6th, as if somehow they're going to persuade people by, some new theory that's come up that with Antifa or a false flag operation. I think someone just called and said somebody was giving hand signals.
Yes. Yes.
Most Americans, most marginal people know what they saw on TV. They saw a mob of Trump supporters rioting.
Yes.
And I don't think they're going to take it much further than that. I also saw that interview with Sun, with the police chief. And he's a very credible guy, and I agree that he probably was a scapegoat. But one important thing, John, Bob mentioned when he said that he was going to, his boss, Sergeant of Arms, before calling in the National Guard, he was going to run it up the chain of command. But here's one important thing that Sun did say. He goes, he didn't have to do that, right? He could have called in the National Guard. He did not have to go to Nancy Pelosi. That people keep leaving that part out. And then the second part, when he finally did go to Nancy Pelosi, she approved to have the National Guard come in. Look, there were a lot of screw-ups, chain of command problems. There was a lot of communication problems with different people in law enforcement didn't get all the information that was coming in, no doubt. And I would recommend anyone maybe not only just watching Tucker, but look at the Senate, the bipartisan Senate hearing when they called the police chief in, had the people from the military, from the Pentagon discussing it. They all made a lot of mistakes. To switch that into some sort of story now that it was a setup, it was definitely a setup. Well, give me the evidence. Give me the evidence that Nancy Pelosi refused to Donald Trump's offer to send in the National Guard. She was out of the loop, John. The people that were supposed to call in the National Guard were Sergeant at Arms in the Capitol Police. But here's what I say. If you want to convince people, provide the evidence.
Yeah.
Provide the evidence that Nancy Pelosi refused to have the National Guard come in. Give me all the evidence you have of Antifa. Give me all the evidence you have of an FBI operation, some secret operation. That might convince people. But until you do that, and I mean evidence more than something you saw on Facebook.
Yeah.
Something Tucker's saying. Yeah, then I think maybe you'll convince people. But as it is now, people are not, they know that what Trump supporters did that day was wrong. That's what most people believe and they saw. And if you're going to change minds, give us real concrete evidence.
You know what I got out of that, Frank? That just like the stolen election, we keep bringing up January 6th. The two things that really will destroy people from voting for Trump in 24 is bringing up those things, because it reminds people that, at some point in his presidency, it was chaotic. And so, you got to get past that. And I don't see us getting past that. And that's part of the problem of why 53% say they will not vote for him. So,
well, Trump definitely won't let you get past the stolen election. That's
true.
But I don't think other Republicans have to keep reminding people of that there's some other scenario that happened in January 6th.
Yeah.
We know what we saw.
Yeah.
And that's what I think.
Yeah. Frank, thank you for the call. Linda and Absecon. Linda, good morning. Welcome to Talk with a Purpose.
Wow. Respectfully, Frank, where have you been?
Yeah.
Really? I mean, I don't want to have to start with the first impeachment and then morph into the second impeachment and now go to J6. You have a lot of research to do, gentlemen. So, the officer that shot Ashley Babbitt.
Yes.
When he finally made an appearance, and like Bob Progner said, it took an awful long time to get his name, let alone his appearance. I can remember seeing him on television, and you saw him behind a door, and you saw, and this is a no-no for officers, as it was explained to me, and probably the article explained it that way. You saw the officer's finger on the trigger. That was a no-no at the time. And I remember him it's reported that he had said he was concerned about Ashley Babbitt. And what he was concerned about, guess what he was concerned, I mean, do you recall hearing anything like this?
No, I didn't.
What he was concerned about with Ashley?
No.
Her backpack. He was concerned about her backpack. And do you know what was in her backpack?
Probably nothing.
A bottle of water and her sweater.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really destructive weapons, huh?
Mm-hmm. Now, to go over to a great topic, and which is the Bible. And marriage this is over in Hebrews in the New Testament. Marriage is honorable in all. This is God's word, by the way. Marriage is honorable in all, and the bed undefiled. But whoremongers and adulterers, God will judge. So it's pretty serious, and it's not something that we have to come of age and adjust our thinking. No, we have to adjust our thinking to what God says about a situation, not what we think society says, and put our imprimatur on what society says. For heaven's sake, look what society is saying now. I mean, your show only has. I mean, you have a great show because you have callers who know what the truth is.
Right.
But I just want to close saying this. There was a man who, and it's now this is found in Corinthians. This is in the New Testament, and he was living with his. He was in church. And he was committing fornication. And the Apostle Paul is saying, it's reported that there's fornication going on among you. And he says, doesn't even happen among Gentiles. That one should have he was living with his stepmother, in other words. And he says, you're puffed up and you've not mourned for this man. And then he goes on to say, get him out. Put him out of the church. Don't you know a little leaven will leaven the whole loaf? That means sin is contagious. Get him out of the church. For he was being turned over to Satan for the destruction of his flesh, because sin will make you sick. So he's being turned over to Satan for the destruction of his flesh, that his spirit may be saved in the day of the Lord Jesus Christ. So the long and short of it was the church listened, and then they put him out of the church. And Paul comes back and he says, I mean, with naming the Lord Jesus Christ, him and the Lord, they're together on this. And so what happened is the man, he got put out, but then he came back, he repented. And so Paul's explaining that, we know how Satan deals. Welcome him back. Forgive him and welcome him back. And Paul goes on to say, now I'm not talking about people who are outside of the church, people who don't know the Lord. But basically what he's saying, and this, I mean, you don't hear this stuff preached in church anymore, but this is Bible. You'll hear it in Pentecostal churches, and you might hear it in a confession at DAB here. I don't know what you'll hear, so let me forget that. So he's saying, Paul's telling the congregation, you know, don't, and he's saying, people who are in the church, you cannot tolerate this. It's unacceptable. He said, I am telling you, with people in the church, that you don't keep company. Any man who says he's a brother, if any man is a fornicator, or see, fornication's bad. So married people commit adultery. You might have young people might be doing a little fornicating. But if any man that is called a brother, that's what we're saying, a Christian, be a fornicator or covetous or an idolater or a railer or a drunkard or an extortioner, with such a one, don't even eat with them. Sin is deadly. We're in a society that we have watered it down. Sin will make you sick. Fools for their transgressions are afflicted. Jesus has come that we have life and have it abundantly. Get your sin under the blood and rethink what you're doing if you've done something wrong, and repent of it.
So,
and
Linda,
I'm exhausted.
So, Linda,
yes,
after that, I would assume that you agree with the Supreme Court decision in New Jersey that the woman.
I don't agree with anything in New Jersey. What?
Oh, okay. But
I don't know what the Supreme Court decided. I mean, did the church have a right to do that?
So you're saying that the church had a right?
No, with New Jersey, I don't trust New Jersey in anything, and I probably shouldn't say that. Probably something good does squeak through once in a while. No, but that's how the church, that's how the Catholic Church is operating, and so I guess you go get a job somewhere else.
Okay, Linda, thanks for the call. Appreciate it. Talk with the purpose of the show, Saturdays 9 till noon, WPG Talk Radio 95.5. Joan, John, and DJ. Oh, I'm sure he has a lot to say. We'll get to all of you after the break, and maybe you as well. 609-407-1450. I'm John DeMasi. More Talk with a Purpose after these words.
The market is up. The market is down. I know from day to day there's a fair amount of volatility. You worry, I worry. We all worry, but not so much when you have a sound financial plan that doesn't depend completely on the market. Hi, I'm Joe Yakovich with this Money Minute. You'll find some real insights in my new book, The Heart of Your Money, Inspiration for Financial Wellness. In this book, I explain in detail how I approach financial planning, retirement, insurance, and many other topics. For a free copy of my book, The Heart of Your Money, simply contact my office at 856-751-1771. That's 856-751-1771. Or you can email me at jyakovich@brokersifs.com. I'm Joe Yakovich with this Money Minute, and thanks for listening.
Want to save money in these inflationary times? Write this number down. 855-910-1246. 855-910-1246. Text your number to that number and you'll be part of BF Mazzio's Text Message Club, where you'll receive specials and coupons that will save you money. BF Mazzio, the finest fresh fruit and produce you'll find anywhere. Gift baskets, catering for all occasions, and more. 601 New Road, Northfield. Online at bfmazzio.com.
Your WPG Talk Radio 95.5 AccuWeather forecast for South Jersey. For this afternoon, mostly sunny with low humidity. Just a beautiful start to the weekend, high 81. Mainly clear, stargazing night, that low dip at a 56. Sunny, hot tomorrow. Smoke from distant wildfires will enhance both the sunset and sunrise for you. High 90 to wrap the weekend. Come Monday, hot and humid with sunshine mixing with clouds, high 95. I'm AccuWeather's Ruth O'Brien on WPG Talk Radio 95.5.
Back here on Talk with a Purpose. Again, give out my email address, jdadv1@comcast.net, jdadv1@comcast.net. And you can always like us on Facebook. Our Facebook address, @TalkWithAPurpose. @TalkWithAPurpose is our Facebook address. And that's our show, Talk with a Purpose, Saturdays 9 till noon, WPG Talk Radio 95.5. Joan and Absecon. Joan, good morning. Welcome to Talk with a Purpose.
Good morning. Good morning. Let me just say first, I was so happy to hear Linda that she sounds well. I was hoping she was well and or perhaps on vacation or something, because with this on this subject, she was quite conspicuous by her absence. And then I was told what number I was in line waiting to get on, and lo and behold, Linda was just before me.
Yes.
So you gave me my very first laugh of the day, so that was good. I laughed out loud when I heard Linda and Joan. So on this school, first of all, let me say I am not Catholic.
Okay.
This is a Catholic school. I don't know. It used to be. I'm not really into stuff as deeply as I would like to be, but I had always heard that was private school. I mean, the parents pay their real estate taxes, which pay for public schools, and then they pay a hefty tuition to go to private school.
Oh, yeah.
Now, as I understand, and I think something that Linda said held this up, that this lady was teaching children that when she was offered the full-time job, it was, I think, art or something. But this is a Catholic school with Catholic teachings. The parents obviously believe in these teachings, or they wouldn't be putting out that kind of money.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if anybody's familiar with Hillsdale College. One of the things that they mention often is that they take not a penny, not in grants, not in student loans, nothing do they have to do with the government. And therefore, they are not beholden to the government in any way, shape, or form. Now, I don't know if this Catholic school has, a different problem, because I do believe that a lot of private schools do get some kind of monies from the government.
Yes,
but
they do.
Now, stop and think. In your position, could you go to work on TBN or TCT in a position where you were in the public eye, and then decide that you were going to come out of the closet as a gay man, and would you think that you weren't going to be fired? It does not. I mean, that would be. How could anybody say that?
Yeah.
Maybe it's some Dems would find that it would be all right, but it's it's just like so many things these days with the political stuff. If you just sat down and used the common sense stuff.
Yeah. Well, it's common sense. Yes, you're right. It's common sense, but my point was that it's discriminatory, and we have laws that say you can't discriminate, but here the Catholic Church was discriminating, and she simply said, "I'm pregnant, but I'm engaged." So, okay. So
this is, as I say, my religious views, I'm sorry to say, are not as strong as I would like them to be. But I understand this is a heavy duty Catholic belief.
Yeah.
And if she now again, I think Linda was mentioning, and I didn't realize before, this woman had gone through Catholic school. She was very familiar with the Catholic rules and regulations.
Yes.
No, that to me that makes it almost a slap in the face.
Yeah.
No, this is, as Hillsdale College keeps saying, and it should be the same with the Catholic. Yes, it was discrimination, but the school has its rules. Now, if you call a rule being discriminatory, they had those rules before this woman was born.
Yeah.
Let alone hired.
Yeah.
And she knew it, and yet she took the job anyway. And then she went against the school rules and then expected them to say, "Oh, well, that's okay." Now, if they had wanted to really stretch it, they should have just transferred her to a behind-the-scenes job in some other way. But I've brought children up, and as I say, not as strongly as I wish I was or is. Am. Let me get there. I did better in English grammar than I'm sounding right now. But the thing is, if I sent, now I did send one. My son did go to a private Christian school, but if I went to school and I heard and I saw something that was completely out of text with the school rules and my beliefs. And the things that I was believing I was paying for when I enrolled and paid, I would be really, really a little pissed off.
Yeah.
Is that improper?
No. That's all right. You didn't get the dump.
Oh, good.
Thanks for the call, Joan. Thanks for the call. Appreciate it. Oh, we could say that. John in Ocean City. John, good morning.
Yes, in British-controlled colonial America, a bunch of kids were having a snowball fight in Boston, Massachusetts. It was on March 5th, 1770. A garrison of British officers were patrolling the area. They came across these youths having a snowball fight after 6 o'clock at night after curfew. The British officer lined them up in uniform division. He turned to the kids and said, "You have to disperse from the snowball fight. It's past curfew. You need to go home now." With that, an African-American named Crispus Attucks threw a snowball right in the face of the officer, and the British garrison of redcoats opened fire, killing killing 5 of them, rather, and severely injuring 8 of them. It's called the Boston Massacre. Now, those guys are just doing their duty, right? They were just doing their duty. They were serving the British crown. But it was a catalyst to revolution. So, yeah, what happened on January 6th is a catalyst to revolution as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, the people with the easy answers are the ones that scare me the most, you know? It looked like a bomb was exploded in Maui, okay? A fire started in British Columbia. It went across the 49th parallel on the Canadian side all the way to Nova Scotia, 3,000 miles. It was all, naturally occurring fires, that's all. Northern California land earmarked for UN sustainability for Agenda 2030 corresponded exactly to land burned in the Northern California fires. Nothing to see here. Move along. Building 7 collapsed in 7 seconds free fall. But National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST, will have us believe it was because debris from towers 1 and 2 fell through the windows and caused out-of-hand office fires. And on Manhattan Island, which has the most fire-resistant codes in the world. Now, don't let your lying eyes deceive you and tell you that was an implosion caused by a controlled demolition. No. You have to believe what the standard narrative tells you, and the standard narrative has lied to us so far. The fact of the matter is that there was no National Guard there present at that event, that January 6th event, at all. And they showed up. What Bob said, they showed up after the shooting and fighting was done. No, that's too late. That's a lame answer from DJs coming on next. I'd like to hear what he has to say. Thank you.
Okay. Speaking of, several callers have called him out. I'm sure he's going to have a lot to say. DJ in Summers Point. Good morning. Welcome to the program.
How you doing, John?
Okay. How you doing?
Oh, I got no problem.
Okay.
Yeah. As far as, everybody has their opinions about what happened that day, but I'll just stick with what I used to do for a living, my training, a little bit of expertise on what transpired that day. And I'm not going to change my opinion. The officer did nothing wrong. You can go off on different tangents, different directions, and trying to, take away from what actually happened. But unfortunately, Ashley lost her life. Okay. But it happened, and it was not the officer's fault. A couple months ago, Speaker of the House, McCarthy, said the officer was doing his job. All right? And that's all he was doing. All right? He was applying his training. He thought there was a serious threat of death or bodily injury, and he was protecting people of Congress. And it's very simple. you can go off and try to go off in different directions, all right, on this.
Yeah.
But it got down to what the film showed, the actions of the moment, what was actually going on. And I find it funny, all right, that people have all this really strong opinion of what the officer should have done, all right? They've never been anything, probably up against anything chaotic, intense, and threatening in their life.
That's right.
But you know what? That officer was. That detective was. Oh, but that lieutenant was. All right? And he did his job.
DJ,
like other police officers.
What about...
I had intense situations myself in my career, even in laid-back South Jersey. All right? But you do what you're trained to do. All right? You apply the law.
What about the backpack? The backpack situation where he said he was concerned about her backpack. And she had, well, of course, he doesn't know what's in the backpack, but she had a sweater and a water bottle.
All right. That's yeah, it was a sweater and a water bottle. But it could have been something more dangerous.
Yeah.
Okay. See, there you go. Okay. All right. And so, what normal person climbs through a window in a situation like that?
Yeah.
Okay. Tries to shatter the doors, shatters the glass.
Yeah.
But see, these people got to learn.
Yeah.
You weren't there. You didn't have your butt cheeks, tense because you've never been up against it.
Yeah.
You've never been put in that situation, and then you want to do the Monday morning quarterback, right? Yeah. Get all the headlines and try to come up with something.
Yeah.
And let me tell you this, all right? And I'm going to tell you, it was a Bob from Cape May. Seems very intelligent individual. Likes Trump, likes DeSantis. I don't know what he does for a living, but I know one thing: he was never in law enforcement.
Well, that I know. Yeah, I know that.
Right? So he does really. And he made a comment about me about I side with police all the time. Well, that's ridiculous, right? I didn't side with the officer in the George Floyd thing.
Yes.
Okay? I didn't side with the Memphis cops right now that are going through the system for what they did to Tyree Nichols.
Yes.
Okay? A lot of times I don't side with police. And good police officers don't side with bad cops. That's not how it's done.
Yep.
But what I rely on what and how I call things is what I see.
Yeah.
And I go back to what I told you the first week after this happened, John. I looked at the tapes, this, that, and the other thing, the mob, all right? And I told you, and people just don't want to accept it. The officer did nothing wrong. He just did his job.
That's right.
Right? And I'm sorry, guys.
You call it like you see it. That's all. You call it like you see it.
I think John, John throws so much stuff out when he talks, and that's fine. But I think at the end of the first time he called in, he kind of mentioned that what I said was right. All right?
Yeah.
But here's another thing. On that lieutenant about he should have lost his job because he left his gun. And what Bob didn't mention, he left his gun, and which he admitted to, and he said, hey, he moved on. He took his discipline and moved on. He left his weapon in the bathroom. Now, people might not realize this, but officers usually take their gun off when they're going to use the facilities.
Yes.
And you know what, John? He's not the first officer to forget his gun in a lavatory.
That's right.
Keep this to yourself. Don't tell anybody. All right? Because I've known that to happen, all right, locally.
Yes.
I'll leave it at that.
Okay.
But we didn't crush their careers. You discipline them. Say, hey, pay attention next time.
Yeah.
That's got nothing to do with nothing.
Yeah.
Absolutely nothing.
Okay, DJ, thank you. Thank you for the call. And, well, you set us straight. Talk with the Purpose is the show, Saturdays 9 till noon, WPG Talk Radio 95.5. We'll talk to Frank, and that's about probably all we have time for. Before our guest at 11 o'clock, Jack Cashel, the author of the book Untenable. We'll talk to him at 11 o'clock. Final thoughts in hour number 2 after these words.
Joe Yakovich is registered with and securities and investment advisory services are offered through Brokers International Financial Services, LLC, member SIPC. Brokers International Financial Services, LLC is not an affiliated company. When it comes to you and your family's financial wellness, there are so many things to talk about. We could go on forever. To help guide you along the way, Joe Yakovich has written a book called The Heart of Your Money, Inspiration for Financial Wellness. In the book, Joe talks about longevity, inflation, retirement surprises, and many other topics. For your free copy of The Heart of Your Money, call the office of Joe Yakovich at JML Financial at 856-751-1771 or email Joe at jyakovich@brokersifs.com. For over 37 years, Joe Yakovich has been helping families throughout the area navigate the difficulties of a sound financial plan. You'll find Joe's approach to be different and not just the cookie-cutter methods that are prevalent in today's world. The path to your financial wellness and or retirement starts with a call to Joe Yakovich at JML Financial Group. 856-751-1771. 856-751-1771. Or email Joe at jyakovich@brokersifs.com.
Back here on Talk with a Purpose, let's get right to it. Frank and EHT. Frank, good morning. You're on Talk with a Purpose.
Hey, Johnny. Thanks for taking my call. Good show. Hey,
Thank
John,
you.
what was Mary's status when she had Jesus? What was her status?
That's a good one. That's a good one.
Hey, last time I read, what's that phrase in the Bible? Let me preface this. I'm raised Catholic. I'm not a practicing Catholic. I'm still Catholic. I love God. I love Jesus. And I love mostly everything about the word of Christ in the Bible. However, I'm well aware of the flaws of human beings and men in particular. But last time I looked, Johnny, it said, woe to those who do harm to children, that it would be better that they were cast into the sea with a millstone. I'm paraphrasing, so to speak. Into the sea if they do harm to children.
Yeah.
Pedophilia is forbidden also by the Catholic Church, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
How's that working out for those priests in the Catholic Church?
Wow.
Johnny?
Yeah, there you go. There you go. And
the hypocrisy.
Thank you for that, because I did not use that phrase, but that was what one of my points was, the hypocrisy of firing a teacher for being pregnant when she's engaged.
Yeah, I do know, John.
I mean, wait a minute. So, but you got thousands of priests who were pedophiles and
practically destroyed the Catholic Church.
That's right. That's right.
With the government attacking also, but again, the government couldn't attack if again the hierarchy of Catholicism didn't allow it to occur. You know, they did it and they were aware of it and they knew it was going on and they allowed it, and a price has to be paid. But Johnny, can we fire some of these unwed mothers with multiple children from different fathers that are on welfare that the taxpayers pay for? Can we fire them?
Yeah.
We're paying for them, too.
Yeah, that's right.
No, we can't fire them.
Oh, no, we can't.
They're unwed mothers, too, and, I just don't get it anymore.
Yeah.
What a country we live in, Johnny.
Yeah.
Hey, Johnny, the narrative about America being bad, the United States, current situation, the form of government, John.
Yeah.
What the white founding fathers, they're the ills of all the world, and hey, Johnny, can you name another system that's better than the one the founding fathers?
No, I can't. And Frank, no, I can't. Frank, sorry, we got to run because we're up against the clock. Hour number 2 in the books. Hour number 3, Jack Cashel, author of the book Untenable. What a book. and you'll find out what a book it is. Talk with a Purpose is the show. Saturdays 9 till noon, WPG Talk Radio 95.5. Hour number 3 on the way. Don't go away.
.5 FM and 1450 AM WPGG Atlantic City, WENJ HD3 Millville, a Town Square media station. WPG Talk Radio 95.5 presents Talk with a Purpose. Join the conversation by calling 609-407-1450. Now, the host of Talk with a Purpose, John DeMasi.
Hour number 3, Talk with a Purpose, every Saturday 9 till noon, WPG Talk Radio 95.5. I'm John DeMasi. We are pleased to have with us today on the show one of the most prolific authors, and I knew about this book, but I didn't know about all the other books, but he's prolific. Jack Cashel is with us. Jack, good morning. Welcome to Talk with a Purpose.
Hey, John, thanks for having me. It's sort of like saying, yeah, he's no good, but he's prolific.
Yeah. Well, listen, you know.
I'll take that.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't realize, I looked you up after we talked, and I said, boy, this guy's written many books. Yeah, well, we'll get to that in a moment, but your book that you're here about is Untenable, and I'm going to let you explain it. What do you mean by that title, Untenable?
Well, I can get specifically to that. I grew up in Newark, New Jersey, obviously. In fact, this nice thing in New Jersey, so I say Newark, I don't have to qualify it. Plus, people in New Jersey know that Newark is a one-syllable word, not a two-syllable word.
Yeah.
Like fork or cork. And in the middle of the 60s, I was an adolescent and watched the city implode around me. I was right in the middle of it. So I had a ringside seat. And my neighborhood, which is Roseville, a small slice in Newark, was in 1960 perfectly harmonious, congenial, functional neighborhood. By 1970, it was a no-go zone, and it was a remarkable transformation. And I was talking to a friend of mine, and I interviewed over 50 people for this book. And this guy's a good friend, and I asked him, and he's a Democrat. There's a big transition of people who left, grew up Democrat, and were turned off to liberalism, essentially, by watching the forces arranged against them. But my friend Artie remained a Democrat. And I said, Artie, why finally did you leave? He was the last one out of my friends. He was living with his widowed mother at that time. And he said, well, Jack, it became untenable. And I said, Art, what do you mean by untenable? He says, well, when your home's invaded for a second time, that's untenable. When your mother's mugged for the second time, that's untenable. And you take Art's story, you multiply by millions, and you have the story of white ethnic flight from America's cities. Now, that story, this is bizarre, John, until I wrote this book, has not been told. No one has bothered. I mean, when I say no one, I mean being this literally. No one of consequence has bothered to ask the people who were forced out of their neighborhoods why they left and what happened to them after they left. Because a lot of them ended up at the Jersey Shore.
It's funny because we were having a conversation and you said that. You said, a lot of the people left the city and they ended up at the Jersey Shore. I said, that's me.
Yeah, right.
You described me and you didn't even know it.
No, and in fact, when I met with my group of my closest friends, to go over, as a sort of a group interview for the book last spring, we met at the place that was closest to all of them, and we were 60 miles south of Newark. Many of them ended up in Ocean County, Atlantic County, Monmouth County, and you could see it in the voting patterns of a place like Ocean County, particularly.
Yes.
Which went 2-1 for Trump.
Yes.
In a blue state, because so many of these people are refugees from the cities. Yeah. And when they arrived, and you know this, I don't need to tell you or your audience this, but people outside don't, because they hear, oh, Jersey Shore, Ocean County. All sounds pretty glamorous. But what they were essentially forced into were these slapdash suburbs being carved out of the pine barrens. They were the only things they could afford. And, in time, those communities matured. But when they first arrived, it was pretty primitive. It was like arriving in, 1840 San Francisco or something.
Yeah. So it's basically then the story of white flight in American cities. Is that correct? Is that a fair
told
assessment?
From the white perspective.
Yeah.
I mean, these are the forgotten people of America. And whites, of course, were not the only ones to flee, but they were the only ones shamed for fleeing.
Yes.
And in my book, for instance, I talk about Whitney Houston's family. Whitney's father grew up in my neighborhood. I didn't know him, but he's a generation older than I am anyhow. But and they lived in Newark all their lives. Whitney's mother, Sissy, wrote a memoir about after Whitney died, and she talks about growing up in Newark, growing up in integrated neighborhoods, hardworking father, 8 children, busted his butt throughout the Depression, going to work every day, supported the family, took him to church every Sunday, had a very sick mother. He took care of the sick mother, raised all the kids to be, respectful and proper Christian. And so she and John Houston marry. They stay in Newark. And then she writes in her memoir, our cozy little village started going wrong. There was crime and there was drugs. And then after the riots in 67, the Newark riots, I said to John, it's time to get out of here. And they did. They moved to the suburbs 3 years later. That was a common pattern among any responsible parent. But, Asian parents did it, Hispanic parents did it, Portuguese parents did it, but only white parents were singled out for shame.
Yeah, that's really... It's always the case. Blame the whites.
Well, otherwise they have to blame themselves.
Yeah.
The people who created the system that made family formation in the black community a liability. I mean, in other words, they set up a series of programs. I'm talking here about government bureaucrats in general. Set up a series of programs in which they promised more rewards for unmarried mothers than they did for married mothers.
Yeah, we were talking about that in the previous hour. It is Talk with a Purpose is the show, Saturdays 9 till noon, WPG Talk Radio 95.5. Jack Cashel is our guest. Jack is as I said, a prolific author, and he's here talking about his book, Untenable, and it's a fascinating read, and it's the story of, I guess, white flight in American cities. I'm curious about this, Jack.
Yeah.
Did anybody ever suggest or call you or anything the word racist? Did that ever come up?
If you're an outspoken, I'll admit I'm conservative politically. Have been ever since the Newark riots. When I was 19. Anyone who's an outspoken conservative has been called a racist, but they've also been called a sexist, a fascist, a homophobe, a classist, a xenophobe, and a climate change denier. So yeah. I've got the whole panoply.
Okay.
I get called racist less often than you think because I'm willing to stand up and speak out.
Yeah.
So, for instance, I live in Kansas City now, but I participated in a reparations debate, a televised debate a couple of months ago. And first of all, they had a hard time finding a second person to be on my side, right? Because people were afraid of the topic.
Yeah.
But I talked to the 3 blacks on the panel like I was talking to you.
Yeah.
I was telling them straight up how I feel, what I felt, what my lived experience was, and I have more lived experience than a lot of them because I grew up in the middle of this. And not only that, John, but I went back to the Newark Housing Authority to work. And this was in the 1980s, and I could see by then the city was a corpse, and the housing projects were, they were comically frightening. They were so bad, right? We used to laugh about it all the time when I worked there because they were so out of control. It was like you're living in a science fiction movie, and you weren't sure how it was going to turn out.
Yeah.
But I knew I could see what had happened. From the beginning, I could see what had happened. Even as a teenager, I could see what happened when you plopped one totally dysfunctional family in the midst of an otherwise, benign neighborhood. Because my block in Newark had been integrated since we moved there when I was 5 years old.
Yeah.
Our next door neighbors were black when we moved there.
Yeah.
My father bought a home on that block when the public school in the block was half black and the neighborhood was probably 10% black. And it maintained that balance for about 10 years until the 60s.
Yeah.
And then in the 60s, two major things happened. One was the institutionalization of programs that rewarded fatherlessness through the Great Society, et cetera. And the other was what we're seeing happen again now in the last 3 or 5 years, and that is the liberalization of the justice system, so that it became a notion of systemic injustice, systemic racism. So the murder rate in Newark, for instance, multiplied sixfold from 1950 to 1972. That's not 6%. That's sixfold, six times.
Wow.
Amidst a shrinking population. Nationwide, between 1960 and 1980, violent crime increased 370%. Now, there was a period where we began to reel it back in. I mean, in New York, for instance, they elected Giuliani mayor in 93, and that was an enormous transition for the good. I mean, after 20 years of Giuliani and Bloomberg, New York City had reduced its homicide rate from 2,500 a year under Dinkins to less than 500 a year finally under Bloomberg. That's 2,000 lives a year being saved.
Yeah.
Well, most of them people of color. That's possible. But now, boy, it's gotten crazy.
Oh, yeah.
So crazy, even the left are fleeing cities. But, of course, they're not talking about it.
Of course.
Are they attributing racism to the motive for leaving?
Do you blame any one segment of the population for this white flight? Can you put your finger on, if you had to put your finger on blame, where would you put it?
I would put it in government. Particularly, I'll be partisan here. Republicans aren't exempt from this, but they're not the ones who've initiated the nonsense. Republicans' failure is to stand by and let the nonsense happen for fear of being called racist. The primary victims of this are African Americans. However, they also become, in a sense, the perpetrators. They're transformed, a lot of them, into the kind of people that would make you want to cross the street. And it's not an irrational movement because the crime differentials. If you live in a city, people who live in cities are forever making these judgments. And you have to. Even if the odds are only 1 in 10 that the person is going to mug you, that's not a chance you're willing to take. Just like if they said, hey, there's only 1 in 10 chance that the plane you're going to take is going to crash. No, you say that's not enough. You'd want a 1 in 100,000.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll do that. So people are always making judgments in that regard, to not only where they walk, but where they live, where they send their children to school. And those are rational judgments made by decent human beings. But if a white person makes that kind of judgment, there's the R word, the scarlet R, waiting to be plopped on his chest.
Yeah. Yeah, that's I'm from Philadelphia, and people have asked me over the years, would you move back there? And I said, not even if they paid me. I mean, really.
I wouldn't move there either, so we're with you now.
Yeah, I mean, every day, and I watch the news in the morning, especially this morning, 7 people shot last night. I mean, a carjacking in addition to that. So why would I live there? Why would I move there? It doesn't make sense to me. And that's why your book is fascinating because, I mean, you trace the history of this thing. I wanted to ask you, you make reference to several famous people.
Right.
But you made a reference to Michelle Obama.
Yes.
And I know you wrote a book about Obama, which we'll get to a little bit later on. But what were you referring to when you referenced Michelle Obama?
Well, Michelle grew up in Chicago, and she had very good, responsible parents, Marion and Fraser Robinson. Fraser did work for the Daily Machine as a precinct captain, and he had a sort of a front job as a waterworks guy. I don't know what he did there exactly. Showed up every now and then and collected a paycheck. But they were good parents. And so when Michelle and her brother Craig, who's 2 years older, were little, it came time for them to go to public school. And there was a brand new school a block away. But it was filled with kids from the projects and nearby housing projects. And so they sent Craig for a year or two, and then Marion Robinson said that's enough. So what she did every day for 2 years is pack the little kids into a car, drive them 15 minutes south to a better neighborhood with a better school. That's a Class D misdemeanor. But she was doing what any responsible parent would do. And even though their kids are black, she and her, Craig and Michelle are black, and the students at the local elementary school are black, she was fleeing the disorder and chaos that comes with the children from dysfunctional families living in a cluster and going to schools. So they come to South Shore, where they moved. It was in transition. Had been a Jewish neighborhood. Had rapidly turned black even by the time they moved there. So there's a public high school just down the street, black, largely 98% black, whatever. So rather than send Craig to public school, Marion Robinson takes a job so she could afford the tuition to send Craig to an almost overwhelmingly white Catholic school, even though the Robinsons aren't Catholic. Again, this is what good parents do.
Yes.
Michelle, they send to a magnet school downtown, more than an hour away by bus. Okay, that's all fair. Then Michelle gets up and starts talking about white flight 2 years ago at a public forum, and she's mirroring what she's heard all her life on the left and from the anti-racist cartel. And she says, what happened was that when families like ours, respectable families like ours, moved to a neighborhood, whites just up and left. And she goes, they were afraid of they were put off by the texture of our hair and the color of our skin. And she says to our audience, which was largely white, you're all running from us and you're all still running. And when I read that, I said, how frigging insulting can you be, Michelle? I mean, I've talked to literally, more than 50 people just for the book about why they left. She knows that's not the reason. When she moved to her neighborhood, it was already virtually all black. It had been a Jewish neighborhood. And as part of the reason I put ethnic in the title, John, is because each ethnic group responded differently. And even though Jews were the most of ethnic groups, the most welcoming of black newcomers and the most accepting, they were also the first to flee. Yes. And the reason was they were dependent on public schools. And not only were they dependent on public schools, they were expecting good public schools.
Yes.
I mean, they had ambitions for their children.
Yes.
And they were higher than those of other ethnic groups. And so they'd be gone very quickly. So by the time Michelle moves there, the neighborhood's essentially all black. She never see people fleeing. They were gone. And so she goes to school at the local elementary, which still had a fair residue of Jewish teachers and a good reputation. But her class, she gets punched in the face on the first day of class. Jeez. The classes are disorderly and chaotic. Her mother intervenes, good mother, Marion Robinson, and gets her place in a class for privileged, special, talented kids or whatever. So Michelle is exempt from the disorder around her. But she's been running her whole life away from the chaos and disorder that comes from broken families forming broken communities. And she all her life.
Yeah.
I mean, how much further away can you get than friggin' Martha's Vineyard, right?
Yeah, that's right. Can you hang on here? We have to do something called Pay the Bills, all right?
You pay your bills. I'll be waiting.
Okay. Jack Cashel is our guest. He is the author of the book Untenable. He's also written a lot of other books, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on in the show. If you have a question for Jack, certainly he welcomes your calls, 609-407-1450. The show is Talk with a Purpose. We will be back with our guest, Jack Cashel, after these words.
Want to save money in these inflationary times? Write this number down, 855-910-1246. 855-910-1246. Text your number to that number and you'll be part of BF Mazzio's Text Message Club, where you'll receive specials and coupons that will save you money. BF Mazzio, the finest fresh fruit and produce you'll find anywhere. Gift baskets, catering for all occasions, and more. 601 New Road, Northfield. Online at bfmazzio.com.
Joe Yakovich is registered with and securities and investment advisory services are offered through Brokers International Financial Services, LLC. Member SIPC. Brokers International Financial Services, LLC is not an affiliated company. When it comes to you and your family's financial wellness, there are so many things to talk about. We could go on forever. To help guide you along the way, Joe Yakovich has written a book called The Heart of Your Money, Inspiration for Financial Wellness. In the book, Joe talks about longevity, inflation, retirement surprises, and many other topics. For your free copy of The Heart of Your Money, call the office of Joe Yakovich at JML Financial at 856-751-1771 or email Joe at jyakovich@brokersifs.com. For over 37 years, Joe Yakovich has been helping families throughout the area navigate the difficulties of a sound financial plan. You'll find Joe's approach to be different and not just the cookie-cutter methods that are prevalent in today's world. The path to your financial wellness and or retirement starts with a call to Joe Yakovich at JML Financial Group. 856-751-1771. 856-751-1771. Or email Joe at jyakovich@brokersifs.com.
We are back here on Talk with a Purpose. Our guest is author Jack Cashel, and Jack has written the book Untenable, The True Story of White Ethnic Flight from American Cities. And we're discussing that. Jack, where can people get this book?
You know, I would recommend, it's a little selfish on my part, to go to Amazon because that's where publishers keep score nowadays.
Okay.
And that's the surest way. Some bookstores may have it, some may not. And some bookstores, and it's unfortunate, tend not to want to stock books. There's theories they don't agree with. So it's just the reality that authors live with today. So,
so Amazon.com is the best source.
Yeah, I would say go to Amazon, right?
Okay, well, we have some folks who have called and said they would like to get the book. So, Speaking of calls, we have someone who wants to talk to you, Jimmy in Eagleswood. Jimmy, you're on with author Jack Cashel.
Hey, John. Thanks for taking my call. I haven't called in a while, but again, it doesn't mean I'm not listening. I am fascinated, and let me tell you why. I don't really have a question. I just want to make a quick statement. When I was a young teenager, my father and my uncles had to go into Newark and get their aunts out. So that's just to put me chronologically in the correct place. So I remember all of this, and I have felt like this since I was a teenager. Listening to this incredible interview, I feel like I'm talking to myself over the radio. It's bizarre.
Yeah.
And maybe because our voices maybe to me sound similar, but I'm telling you, I get goosebumps listening to what he's saying because I've been saying this forever. And crazy enough, the town I grew up in had a black family, a very successful, polite, friendly black family, and their name was Robinson, which is really weird because I'm starting to think, I'm starting to think, wait a minute, there must be a connection here. But anyway, this is fascinating, and here's, without any racism attached, with nothing uncomfortable, it's the absolute truth. Thanks, guys. And I appreciate it.
Thanks for the call.
Jimmy's he's exactly right. First of all, when he started talking, I said, how refreshing it is to hear people who sound like I do. I live in Kansas City, so I don't get that very often. He said they deserve. He said what this is the truth, and I closed the book with the word "the truth," because what I said, I'm writing really for my parents' generation, the ones who bore the brunt of this transition, and I wish I had the book out. I've written it earlier so that more of them were still around. But I closed with, I said, the dispossessed, I'm talking about those forced into exile, they don't need sympathy. They don't even want, kindness or whatever. They just deserve the truth. The truth. And that's what I aim for in this book. And it's a universal truth. As Dostoevsky once said, tell the story of your village, and if you tell it well, you tell the story of the world.
Yeah.
Well, my village of Roseville, a little slice of Newark, there's 1,000 Rosevilles all across America. And the ethnic composition varies from one to another. This being New Jersey, ours is Irish and Italian mostly. But the pressures they faced were almost identical because they were facing the breakdown of community, the breakdown of family, orchestrated intentionally or not. I don't know. I let the audience be the judge by the federal government, and particularly and executed by the local government as well. Often just for the totally selfish purpose of, like, let's say, getting a demolition contract or something, street level kind of gangsterism, as in Newark was not unusual.
Yes. we all remember The Sopranos.
And The Sopranos are based on a real live family called the Boiardos.
I know. I read that. Yeah.
And what's funny is that when I was talking about when the public housing first became a thing, and they were clearing slums, they had to call them slums before they could clear them. And that included the entirety of Little Italy, which was an amazing thing. And when you think about it, there were the Boiardos with their demolition company, getting a slice of the action. So for some people, they cared less about their own communities, and this goes for blacks, whites, whoever, than they did about getting a piece of the action.
We have someone else who wants to talk to you, Jack. Greg in Absecon. And Greg, you're on with author Jack Cashel.
Mr. Massey, good morning.
Good morning.
Jack, good morning.
Greg, yeah.
It's as much a comment as a question in the end. The book could have been named Inevitable, because that was going to happen to the cities regardless of what was taking place. Because I lived in a mixed neighborhood and we got along great. It was not a problem. We sent our daughter to a Catholic. There was a school two blocks away. We sent our daughter to a school that was 8 blocks away. She walked home with a crowd of people. By the time she got home, she was singular. Nobody else with her.
Yeah.
One day, it's February now, this is the middle of winter, someone, and I don't care what color they were, decided that they wanted her coat. So they took it.
Yes.
Jeez.
Both my wife and myself, we worked. The school the Catholic school took the attitude, well, that's your responsibility. Okay, that sounds reasonable to me. What's your responsibility?
Well, what they did in my school, Greg, what they had to do I went to a Catholic school, and it was a great Catholic school. There's 1,000 kids. I had 66 kids in my 4th grade classroom, but there was no ADD, no ADHD. They did a good job of holding not only the families together, but holding the neighborhood together. What we had to do at one point, though, is to stagger the times we left school, so it would not coincide with the public school, so that the kids weren't walking on the streets at the same time. And to your point, and little girls are vulnerable. I talked to one woman, and she said she was mugged all the time. And I always persist in these things. And I said, what does all the time mean? It's not all the time. She said about 6 times.
Wow.
Well, you're 11 years old. 6 times equals all the time.
Yeah.
That's enough.
Yeah.
And the thing is, in that generation, my first mugging occurred when I was 9. It made the newspaper because my father was a cop. And but after that, I stopped telling my parents, as this woman did, because we were free-range children. We enjoyed our freedom. We were able to roam, wherever we wanted, and we did not want to have our parents rein us in. So we were in a sense rendered a little more vulnerable that way, but it was a sacrifice many of us were willing to pay.
Yep.
Well, Greg, thanks for sharing.
You pay it. Well, I still have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
You put up with a lot of things in all your life. When you get to your children and you have no control over what's happening to them, that's what moves you.
That's right. Yeah. And that's why, even though we were, is as free range as we were, John. I speak for myself and a whole lot of other people. We didn't allow our children the same freedom we were allowed.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Greg, thank you. Thanks for the call. 609-407-1450 if you have a question for Jack Cashel. I want to stay on this book, but since we talked about Michelle Obama and how ridiculous her statement was, you wrote a book about Obama. What did you find about him that maybe we don't know about?
Well, I don't know if you noticed the thing it's been in the news for the last couple of weeks about how he fantasized about having sex with men. You probably saw that.
Yeah, I saw that.
David Garrow, the Pulitzer Prize winner, went public with this. Well, I had that quote in my book, Unmasking Obama, 3 years ago. It's just that the thing is, only if someone in the mainstream media says something, other people in the mainstream will listen. People who are, in the alternative conservative media say something, we get ignored. But, I got into the Obama stuff accidentally early on. In the summer of 2008, I was kind of bored. I'd been busy on another project, got stuck in an airport, and I picked up a copy of Dreams from My Father. And I started reading it, and I was about 20 pages in. I said, he didn't write this book. And, I also, John, I do a lot of ghostwriting. I've written for other people more prominent than I am, about 30 books. Many of these people are household words. I mean, I don't talk about who they are, but if a person's not a writer and he writes a book, he had someone else write the book. A rule of thumb.
Yeah.
Right? So, and I did it. So I'm reading it, and I said 20 pages in. I said, no, that's not it. And then I started doing some research, started Googling around, fiddling around. Wasn't making any headway. And then in September of 2008, this is before the election, on another thread altogether, I picked up Bill Ayers' book, Fugitive Days. And I started reading that. I wasn't even thinking that Ayers might have been a ghostwriter. And then I'm 20 pages into that. I said, bingo. I mean, the styles are identical.
Yeah.
And then I started going through both books, and I found overwhelming textual evidence that Bill Ayers played a major role in writing Dream from My Father. And I needed a lot of words to make my case, and I got turned down by all the respectable conservative media at the time, National Review, Weekly Standard, etc. And so finally the American Thinker published it online, and it was early October 2008, a month before the election. Rush Limbaugh picks up the story and starts talking about it, right? And the evidence is simply overwhelming. There's nothing racist about it. It's just that what it proves is he's a liar, that he lied not only about his relationship with Bill Ayers, but he lied about his ability to be, the left had declared him a literary genius. I also pointed out that the story that he was telling was in large parts fictional. It wasn't true. I just finished a memoir. My book is true. I mean, from beginning to end. There are no fact checker is going to find anything that's not factual. I mean, if you're writing a memoir, why lie? But Obama did. So I knew he was just like, not only was he a fake intellect, but he was a fraud, and he was willing to lie his way to get into power. That is what I knew. And now it's widely accepted that Bill Ayers played a major role in Dreams from My Father. But when I came out with it at the time, back to your earlier question, the way the left responds to a criticism of Obama, and it set a dangerous and terrible trend.
Yes.
It's to simply call you a racist, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's it.
So I said, I responded. I said, people have been challenging Shakespeare's authorship for 500 years, because it's a kind of a literary game. That is, if there's a element of literary fraud, there are other people who are literary detectives who want to snoop it out. I wasn't even looking for it when I found it. I wasn't expecting it.
Yeah.
So that's how I got started in the Obama canon.
You know what I call him here on the show? I call him Saint Obama. because you can't criticize him. You're automatically a racist if you do.
That's right. You get excommunicated from the Church of
That's right. You know,
the Church of Polite Society.
That's right. In 8 years, he was never criticized, and
it was amazing.
Yeah. So
scandal-free. That was the phrase they used.
Yeah.
Scandal-free administration.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh boy. We have another break, Jack, and then we'll come back and we got a few more questions for you. Jack Cashel is our guest. He is the author of the book Untenable, and that's what we're talking about here on the show. And you can get the book at Amazon.com. Very easy to do. And I suggest you pick it up. We are coming back with more Talk with a Purpose in just a moment.
If you're interested in driving one of the finest automobiles on the market today, then you'll want to check out all of the fabulous new and pre-owned Lexus at Lexus of Atlantic City. Lexus of Atlantic City, 3169 Fire Road in EHT. Driving a Lexus is like no other vehicle on the market. Test drive one for yourself at Lexus of Atlantic City. Whether it's new or pre-owned, you'll be more than satisfied. In fact, Lexus is consistently number one when it comes to customer satisfaction. Visit Lexus of Atlantic City, 3169 Fire Road in EHT. Or you can check out their outstanding selection of new, pre-owned, and L-certified pre-owned vehicles on their website, LexusOfAtlanticCity.com. That's LexusOfAtlanticCity.com. Or if you want more information, call 609-641-0008. Lexus of Atlantic City, now celebrating their 26th year in the area. A dealership that you'll enjoy. No pressure, no gimmicks, no hassle, no hype. Lexus of Atlantic City, 3169 Fire Road in EHT. And remember, always online at LexusOfAtlanticCity.com.
Your WPG Talk Radio 95.5 AccuWeather forecast for South Jersey. For this afternoon, mostly sunny with low humidity. Just a beautiful start to the weekend, high 81. Mainly clear, stargazing night, that low dip at a 56. Sunny, hot tomorrow. Smoke from distant wildfires will enhance both the sunset and sunrise for you. High 90 to wrap the weekend. Come Monday, hot and humid with sunshine mixing with clouds. High 95. I'm AccuWeather's Ruth O'Brien on WPG Talk Radio 95.5.
Back here on Talk with a Purpose, our guest, Jack Cashel. He wrote the book Untenable. And again, it is available. The easiest way to get it is Amazon.com. And I suggest you go there right now. Go on your computer or your phone or your laptop, whatever, and order it. It's a good book, and you'll enjoy reading it. Jack Cashel, Untenable. And, of course, you can check out all his other books. Like I said, he's a prolific author. You like that word, huh, Jack?
Yeah, I it begins to add up for a while. After you write you start writing, you wonder at what point can you call yourself a writer, right?
Yes.
I mean, it's because that's a designation that other people should attribute to you, not you attribute to yourself. But after 17 books now, I feel comfortable saying I'm a writer.
17. That's a piece of cake, right?
Yeah. The first one is the hard one.
Yeah.
The first one, to get a book published, by a real publisher, that's the hard part. You get that first one, it becomes progressively easier.
Yes, I'm sure. Jim has called back. He wants to talk to you again. Jim in Eagleswood. Jim, hi. You're on with Jack Cashel again.
Hey guys, thank you again. Listen, I was so shocked before about what I was listening to, I forgot to ask my question.
Okay.
Jack, are you still a Jersey guy?
I spend a week every summer at the New Jersey Shore, but I live in Kansas City, and I have a summer place where I am right now in Western New York State, right on Lake Erie.
Oh, lucky you. Well, if you're ever in Jersey and you ever do a book signing, post it somewhere, because I got to shake your hand.
Hey, Jimmy, you're in Eagle. Okay, I did my book TV presentation, which I would recommend you can go to C-SPAN and put in book TV and just put my name in. I did that in Seaside Heights a few weeks ago. So that went well. It was a great crowd, and the shore is I grew up on the shore. I refuse to go to any other beach. It seems to me.
What part of the shore?
We always went to the Seaside Park area, Seaside Heights, Ortley Beach,
Park,
that area.
Oh, I know it well.
Yeah.
Spent my life on Casino Pier as a kid.
I spent many a quarter there, I must say. Back when a quarter got you somewhere, right?
Yeah, right. That's true. All right. Well, do you have a website?
Yeah, Cashel.com. Thanks for asking.
Oh, that's all.
CASHILL.com. Okay.
Okay.
All right, well, I'm going to go to it. Thank you so much.
Jimmy,
Bye.
thanks for the call. Thanks for the call.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Jack. I forgot to mention your website, Cashel.
I forgot to mention.
Yes. Well, I'm supposed to mention it. Cashel.com is the website, and of course the book is Untenable. Okay, I got to ask you. This is a serious question.
Yeah.
You live in Kansas City.
Right.
You're from Newark.
Right.
Who did you root for in last year's Super Bowl?
I was Kansas City, of course, but Philadelphia. No, here's the trick. It was odd because I was in Ocean City last year. Was that this spring? I was in Ocean City in April, and I was just walking along the boardwalk in Ocean City, and it was a cool day, and I had a Kansas City Chiefs jacket on, and the guy says to me, he goes, "You've got your nerve wearing that here," and I'm thinking. See, I forgot where I was, right? South Jersey is Philadelphia country.
That's right.
Seaside on North is like Giants territory.
Right. So you could have got away with it there, but not here.
And I grew up a Dodger fan. We thought, all the time about that stuff, but by the time I was old enough to go to a baseball game, the Dodgers were already gone. So, I'm a sort of, the NFL's. I haven't fully recovered from their summer of kneeling.
We had a field day with that one here on the show. Really. Yeah.
And the problem is I'm not from Kansas City, so I'm not into the Chiefs the way other people are. I envy them their commitment when the Chiefs win, and they've been doing very well, obviously, the last bunch of years, but it's not a passion,
We have another caller wants to talk to you. Andy is in Brigantine. Andy, good morning. You're on with author Jack Cashel.
Good morning, gentlemen. Jack, I spent a week in Seaside Heights one night.
I think a few people have done that. Probably in the local brig down there, the local Hooskow.
When was the last time you were at Seaside Heights?
I was there in July.
Okay, it's changed a lot since you were a kid, huh?
Yes and no. It had a thuggish period that followed on the heels of the success of Jersey Shore, which was filmed there.
Okay,
but now it's reverted back to its family orientation. I was surprised. I was pleased, actually.
I'm glad to hear that. I went there, I'm going to say, about 20 years ago. I was dating a woman who said when she was growing up, they went there all the time. And so she and I and her two young children went. And at the time, I had a 67 Goat convertible, and I was afraid to leave it there unattended. We went up on the boards, and she couldn't believe how it had changed. And now, again, this is 20 years ago. I mean, it was nothing but tattoo parlors and piercing pagodas and places that sell underwear that says "Home of the Whopper" in the front.
Well, in 2020, they had one shop on the boardwalk that only sold Trump memorabilia. So there,
I'm ready to go back then. It's interesting. You were mentioning Barack Hussein Obama, and he frequently brought up the word suburbs. And whenever he used the word suburbs, it was really code for the word white. And, what's happening now is they're trying to drive city dwellers into the suburbs. They're trying to bait towns. They're trying to bait the suburbs with government money. If you don't allow this low-income housing and Section 8 in your neighborhood, we will simply take away your federal funds. So they kind of bribe these towns into doing it. And what ends up happening, what I believe is the goal of this, ultimately, is a way of gerrymandering, because we know the cities vote Democrat. So if you can move the city dwellers into the suburbs, you can change the Republican suburbs into Democrat enclaves so that the Democrats will win not only the cities, but the suburbs, and it'll be, one party all the time winning. It's basically a form of gerrymandering.
I think you're right, because they're doing that all over the country, and they meet resistance too. But what happens is they take over these little, small town city councils, the activists, and they, before anyone knows it, they're approving, new Section 8 low-income housing. I was there at the launch of, I worked for the Housing Authority, both in Kansas City and Newark. I was there at the launch of the Section 8 program. And I said, this is a disaster. And they said, why? I said, well, this isn't like school vouchers, because what you're doing now is you're taking families, you're encouraging them to cheat, and you're putting them into neighborhoods where one or two families like this could destroy a block. You only need one crack house on a block to destroy a neighborhood. And, but no one listened. Even Republicans signed on because they thought it was somehow like school voucher program. That's crazy.
Yeah. Well, for about 4 or 5, I live in Brigantine. You're familiar with Brigantine, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. So I've lived full-time in Brigantine for 7 years now. When I first moved there full-time, I live in a twin, and on the other side of the wall, so I had basically 2 layers of sheetrock and a 2x6 separating me from the people on the other side of the wall. And there were a middle-aged man and woman living there off the government, both on disability, and neither one of them was disabled. If you saw them walking around, you'd never suspect either. But they were milking the system. And I used to leave my house when it was dark and come home when it was dark. And, and these people had done nothing all day but sit on their steps, smoke cigarettes, drink coffee, and then drink booze and fight. And I thought, do Section 8 people, it might sound like a horrible thing to say, but I'm just going to say it. I mean, do people who live off the system deserve to live on an island 2 blocks from the beach when I had to work my backside off to get a place like that? And now I have to look at their shopping carts in the front lawn while mine's manicured and landscaped. And it was like the Munsters living next door to the Cleavers. Really, they finally moved out.
Oh, the Munsters weren't that bad. They didn't have shopping carts in their front lawn anyhow.
No, that's true.
No, you're right. True. But that's the story times thousands and thousands and thousands. Just for instance, I talk about this in the book. And a woman named Leah Bustan, who's a professor at Princeton, and writes an op-ed in the New York Times a few years ago, really touting her own book on white flight, which won some kind of major award. And she writes it's trying to decide what was the motivating factor for white flight. And she said, was it pure racism or was it a combination of racism and economics? And at the end, she says, what makes my job hard is that very few of the people who left the cities of white flight left accounts. And she goes, in fact, if asked, I don't think most of them would know why they left. And I laughed out loud when I read that. And then I went to the comment section, and I thought these people, this is New York Times readers, one after another told stories exactly like yours. I'm living in this neighborhood, and all of a sudden, people next door are having parties all night, leaving shopping carts on the front lawn. From New Haven, from Philadelphia, from Detroit, Chicago, Baltimore, Camden, up and down the northeast, north central United States, out to California. One story after another. And as one person said in his response to Bustan's article, how could you possibly write a book about white flight and not mention either crime or schools? And these are the people who are controlling the narrative today and have been controlling it for the last 60 years. And I wrote Untenable to vindicate those people who haven't had a voice and who haven't had a chance to correct the record.
Okay, Andy, thanks for the call. One more call. Bob and Cape May. Bob, good morning.
Hey, great topic, Jack, and good job there, John DeMasi. Hey, look, I kind of lived what you're talking about, Jack. I grew up in an area of Philadelphia. It was like a few blocks away from Fishtown, and Fishtown was a real life. I think it sounds like you've read a lot of Charles Murray, who I've read a lot of too.
Yeah,
and greatest sociologist of the last century. And in Fishtown, Okay, you didn't have much money, but it was a decent place to live. Okay, and you Murray contrasts that with Belmont in Massachusetts, high end income, and he talked about in his book, which is it was a great book. It was called
Losing Ground. Was that it?
Losing Ground. Correct. Sorry. Yeah. I mean, he talked about the same ills that have befallen the black community for the last 60 years are starting to hit the white working class really great. And in his book published in 1984, Losing Ground, the correlation is there. The destruction of the black family has led to all these social ills. And that happened with Lyndon Johnson. You may have mentioned that. I didn't tune into the whole hour. But that's where it all stems from, this idea that we were going to fix all the ills, the societal ills, through government programs and money. It's been an absolute disaster. You cannot replace the father. That is the key message here. You cannot replace all the government money and programs in the world. If you take a strong father away, you will have children that grow up into monsters as adults. That's the reality, and that's what's destroying a lot of these big cities. It's as you said, I really need to get your book. It's making these big cities hellholes. I drove my parents. Go ahead.
I was going to say you're exactly right. I mean, that's it in a nutshell, right?
Yeah.
Go ahead, continue. Sorry.
No, I'm sorry. I don't want to filibuster here, but I drove to my parents' grave site in Philadelphia last year. The expressway was closed, so I took the city route. All right. All right. I got off, John. You probably know. I got off the Ben Franklin Bridge, drove about 4 or 5 miles down 5th Street, and it was an absolute. I knew what I was going to encounter. It was an absolute wasteland. For all 5 miles, every block, about half the homes were abandoned. Okay.
Not last break.
I dropped him. He dropped.
Oh, sorry. Oh, we dropped him. Accidents happen here on radio, Jack.
No, his point was well made, and because when I was doing this book, I have a cousin who's still in the Newark PD. My father was a cop, my uncle, several of my cousins, and he gave me a 2-day tour, and we went everywhere. And when people, and I get asked this by when I'm doing shows up in that part of the world, they say, "Oh, you think Newark can come back?" No, no, not unless you raise it to the ground and start over. I mean. It is, you can always have a little cosmetic, cleaning on downtown because there's a lot to be said about its location and everything. But, no, it's been dead for 60 years, and it's unfortunate, and it never had to happen. That's the shameful thing.
Jack, one final question. What do you see as the future for America since you wrote this book?
Well, I'm an optimist by nature, and I like to think good things will happen, and when I see terrible things happening, I think, well, someone somewhere is finally going to get some sense. When I saw the Oakland NAACP come out for stronger police and the defund, movement, et cetera, I thought maybe this is the kind of awakening we need because they have to wake up. Half of America is awake. They take care of themselves. They're the ones who own weapons and live in small towns and try that in a small town, right? As Jason Aldean said.
Yeah.
But the woke have to wake up. That's basically what it comes down to.
Yeah.
And unless they do, they're destroying. How can you destroy San Francisco? They did.
Yeah,
How
they
can
did.
you destroy Portland? They did.
Yeah.
And that's not an issue of black or white in those cities.
No.
That's just an issue of dysfunctional government and willingness to self-destruct. It's crazy.
Yeah. Jack, we really thank you for spending a lot of time with us. The book is Untenable. Jack Cashel is the author. His website, cashel.com. And if you want the book, go to amazon.com. Get yourself a copy. It's a very, very good book. And look, I read it in a week, so
that's good science.
That's unusual for me. So
it's meant to be. It's written to be read. That's what I tried to do.
Yes.
So,
Jack, thanks a lot, and continued success as an author. And maybe we'll have you back to talk about your next book.
Hey, John, anytime. Thanks.
Thank you.
Do a good show.
Thank you. Jack Cashel, Untenable. And again, Amazon.com. Go to that, and you will be very pleased to pick up a copy of that book. Well, we thank you. Boy, the time flies when you're having fun. Thanks to Jack Cashel, our guest, for being here and talking about Untenable. Thanks to Chris Coleman, our program director and producer, for doing his usual great job. And, of course, thanks to you for being here every week without fail. Without you, no show. It's very, very simple here. No listeners, no show. Okay? Next week, of course, we'll have Joe Yakovich back to talk about finances and usual stuff that, hey, we never run out of things to talk about here on the show. So, and if we do, we just talk about Trump. That's what else can I tell you? Talk about Trump. I'm John DeMasi. Thank you for listening. Have yourself a great week. We will do it all over again next Saturday. Talk with a Purpose here. WPG Talk Radio 95.5. Also heard on 1450 AM and WPGTalkRadio.com on our website. You take care of yourself.
The preceding program was paid for and presented by John DeMasi.